Yeah, so where are you from?
Jersey. Yes, sir. Jersey, Sicklerville, a little suburb outside of Philadelphia. Been there my whole life. Born and raised.
Nice.
And really started seeing the country just about a couple months ago.
Okay. How many states have you been to so far?
Florida, really, and Florida. Florida and Delaware. Yeah, I soaked up Delaware about a month, but that was a lot of just kind of getting into the flow of it. Yeah, take your time with that. Till it is perfectly alive.
Good now.
Yeah, I always feel weird doing it for someone, because then I'm just like all up in their personal space. Yeah.
Yeah, man, Florida's awesome. We used to vacation down there sometimes.
Where'd you guys go?
Well, we went to Orange Beach a lot, Pensacola. I actually went to school in Pensacola for a semester before I transferred to JSU. But
What were you learning?
well, I started out doing electrical engineering, and it took me about a month before I realized
Not for you.
chemistry was not for me. Like, yeah, it was chemistry was one of the core courses or something like that, or it is. Oh. And yeah, I was just like, not doing good, man. First quiz, it was like, bombed it, and I was like, yeah, maybe I should rethink this.
It's good that you find that out in the first few months, man. Because it's sad for me to see when I see a lot of kids that will go to college and they don't like what they're doing off the rip, and they change it, and they don't like that either, and they change it, and they change it, and they change it, and they kind of just sink themselves into debt. And like, did you feel confident when you were going into it? Because what were you, 18 when you went to college?
Yeah, so I was 18, man, and I really just kind of followed my friends from high school to Pensacola, and it was a good school. You know, our ideas didn't really align in a lot of ways.
When you say you went to college?
Yeah. So it was a Christian college, and it was pretty strict. And I just wasn't really used to that, and so we just didn't kind of agree on a lot of things.
What sort of rules was it? Was it like boys and girls very separated? You have to have Bible studies and things like that, like.
Yeah, so it was, you you didn't have to have Bible studies, but it was you kind of had to. You couldn't go on dates like just you and a girl, or couldn't drink. You couldn't party and things like that.
When you say dates, how did they even monitor that?
Like, so you would have a chaperone. So you would go like request. It could be another student. It could be a family member or whatever, and you would just request a chaperone, and then fill out like it's kind of like a pass thing, and then you just be like, yeah, I'm going to the beach or wherever you're going for your date, and just kind of there was no overnight dates or anything like that. But needless to say, there was ways around it.
Oh fuck yeah!
Oh yeah, you just meet off campus. You just both go off, on your own, and you just kind of meet up.
Yeah, that seems like one of those rules that they can't actually enforce. Unless they have someone stalking the students at all times, it seemes very difficult.
So there's a lot of snitches. So yeah, so you just.
You mean good Christian boys for the Lord? They're watching over.
Well, I mean, if you decide to go there, you kind of know what you're getting into, and I don't take anything away from anybody wanting to go there. It's a good college, but it wasn't for me. Just I really like my freedom, and I like to be able to make mistakes and learn the hard way in a sense. So.
Fuck yeah, that ability to just be an independent human, like allow me to fuck up. Don't always have to be the mom like watching over my shoulder, like, are you doing everything exactly right, sweetie? Let me pave the road for you all the time in life.
Yeah, and for me it was just I was like, when you get in the real world, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna not everybody's gonna be your friend. They're gonna be some people out there trying to get you in some ways, and it was too sheltered in a sense. They just kind of wanted to baby people too much, and I was like, look, you're adults. You're gonna make your decision, man, and have to stick with the consequences of it.
So how'd you end up in the Army?
Oh, that's a good story, man. So it's kind of a long story, but it starts in Pensacola. So yeah, after my first semester in Pensacola, started out in the fall, doing engineering, and just didn't really like it. Just wasn't very good at it. I'm a math guy, but it was the chemistry that got me. And weirdly enough, but then the spring semester took that semester off, went home, worked at Lowe's, and then I worked at a steel plant in Alabama, and worked through the summer. And I was actually going to go to Boston and continue engineering at a college in Boston, And my cousin invited me to go to a college day at JSU. So I went, and it was great, and just fell in love with the place. Super friendly, like an hour or two from home. Real familiar with the area, so just really comfortable with it. And they had the degree I wanted at the time, finance, because my priorities had kind of shifted, and it had kind of what I wanted. The atmosphere, the culture, the climate. It was really great place, and so I enrolled that summer. I had to kind of start over, so none of my credits transferred. So I had to start college all over again.
How long were you in college beforehand?
Just a semester.
Gotcha.
So it was the previous fall semester, and then I took the spring off, and then back in the summer I started at JSU and had to kind of work my way back up, like get those credits back, and it was kind of frustrating a little bit at first, but I had to get back into it. So by the fall semester, I had kind of gotten back into the swing of things, and I was like, I had got my rhythm back, my momentum, and I was doing really well in my classes. I think I had like all A's or something at the time, and
Nice.
Doing really well, and I wanted to get more involved. And so I started looking for programs and things to do with the school, and nothing really caught my eye until I saw the ROTC program, and they were offering bonuses and money to, for contracts and things like that. And so I went up there and got some more information, and then at this point it was around January. And got some more information, and then before I knew it, I was signing up to go to basic training, and signed up they offered me a $20,000 bonus. Well, the National Guard did, but it was in conjunction with ROTC.
So hold on, I'm sorry, I think I missed something. So you were still doing college while you went into the military?
Yeah. So to be honest with you, that fall semester, I got kind of bored with school, and I was like, I just kind of need something else, like I wanted to do something else while I was doing school. And so yeah, I was like, what can offer me kind of a little money, a little bonus, and so it was never really meant to be a career at first. And yeah, so they offered me a bonus, and they were like, we're gonna send you off in April, and then you'll get back in August, 3 days before the next semester started for the fall. So I finished the spring semester out. And then, like a week or two after the spring semester ended, I was on a bus to Fort Benning, Georgia. So, yeah, it was great, man.
Yeah. So, are you still going to college, or was it just a complete shift towards Army life?
No, so I got back graduated basic training, and got back around probably like August 17th, something like that. And then I had the weekend with my family, and then Monday it was back in ROTC, back in college, and that started. My sophomore year of college.
Yeah. How old are you now?
I'm 23. I'll be 24 in a couple months. So yeah.
Cool. How long have you been in the Army? What do you say? So last August 17th?
No. I've been in for 3 years. It'll be 4 years in March.
Oh shit. Where do you see yourself going with it?
Well, right now with the religious exemptions and things like that, it's kind of.
What do you mean religious exemptions?
So there's the DoD, they implemented the vaccine mandate for the COVID vaccine, and I don't personally, my beliefs don't align with that. So I have submitted a religious exemption. So pending on if they approve that or whatnot, will kind of determine my future with the military. If they will keep me in and they want to continue to have me serving, then I would be more than happy to stay.
Have you gotten COVID before?
Yes, I've had it 2 or 3 times over the course of 2 or 3 years. So. Yeah,
ditto. And that, so they're saying essentially you can't be in the military unless you're vaccinated. Is that what the mandate is stating? Because I'm not aware of the specifics of.
Yeah, so pretty much they want the entire force to be vaccinated. Yeah.
That seems kind of okay. Like you're a young man. And you seem fit. Like we met in Jiu Jitsu class. That's fit. You're jogging around. Like you're healthy. You're in what seems to be the lowest. You're the least likely person, generally speaking, to be harmed by COVID. Like really harmed. And the fact that they're actually making that a law that you have to have that to be in the military, that seems very silly. I can't see exactly the logic behind it.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely it's not a very hot. It is a very hot topic right now, but it's not very popular within the military. they are forcing, like I said, like a lot of the members to get it against their better like against the service members like better judgment, because a lot of people don't want to get it just because of
Ditto. I'm not vaccinated.
well, it's because of the stigma behind it, the corruption, it hasn't been thoroughly tested. A lot of people think that, and then it's like almost every month now there's something coming out about it that's like, you have myocarditis, the side effects from that, and then you have like the fertility issues with women and now men. And then there was a video, it's like 2 or 3 weeks ago, came out that there were doctors saying that it was like increases your chance of getting cancer by like 1,000%. And they were like, these statistics were, I can send you the video actually.
Yeah, please do, because I'm really curious.
It opens your eyes to the corruption at the top levels.
So who was making this video? Because I'm curious.
Oh, it was a congressman was interviewing like a panel of doctors. It was like 12 doctors from different regions and areas and different specialties, but there was one of the doctors was a heart specialist, and he was saying how regardless of like whether or not you're healthier or you're older, you have underlying health conditions, that myocarditis like negatively affects your heart, and it's not just like in little increments. Like it's a big deal. Like it's gonna like affect you. It's like a severe like it can severely like impact you and things like that. And it was very eye-opening, like to see several different doctors, man, just saying the same things of like it's not been thoroughly tested, like just over and over again. And
there's something I want to make a pause. I love diving into the deep waters of the most controversial topics. So if I ever go into anything you don't want to talk about and you don't feel comfortable, just let me know, because I respect that. But continuing on with this subject, because it seems like you're fine talking about it. I remember you said something about the vaccine. So I was watching a couple of videos leading up to this. I was watching some videos of Joe Rogan and some of the specialists he's had on, and then I was watching some CNN videos, because I know that they clash a lot, that they have a lot of opposing views, because I was trying to figure out some bit of truth in this. And one of the most difficult things is trying to figure out exactly who is the most reliable source of information on these topics. Because when you're talking about the increased risk of myocarditis, that was actually one of the main topics being brought up, and that there are apparently two schools of thought. One saying that no, there's actually a good amount of data saying that you're more likely to have myocarditis if you get COVID than from the vaccine. And then there are obviously the opposing schools of thought that say you're more likely to have myocarditis from the vaccine as opposed to COVID. And as I'm listening to this, I guess a lot of it just has to do with me needing to dive in more and more and more and more. But I'm struck by the fact that most people, because this is kind of going to be my job, right? Talking about hot topics like this. So I have a lot of time to look into it. But for someone like you, who are just everyday citizen, it doesn't seem like people have the practical time to be spending hours and hours and hours digging into more and more opposing schools of thought and research. And that really, I feel like that's one of the biggest issues highlighted by all this COVID shit, is like, what is a credible source of information on all these?
Exactly. I think for me it's come to a point where you almost can't trust the data from like places like the CDC and the FDA anymore, because there's conflict of interest with the people making these decisions. And it's like, okay, well, if I can't trust where, I get the information from, well, I have to go somewhere else to get my information. And so then you start going to conspiracy theories or whatever, and you start, really having to dig for this information. I mean, you expect to be able to go to the CDC and get unbiased information, but when you have big pharma, and like, Pfizer and Moderna are paying, they're, contributing and donating all this massive amounts of money, and it's just
isn't that a constant theme when there's some amount of corruption or problem going on? The quote, follow the money, and that will lead you to a lot of the sources of where the corruption lies. And like you're saying, Pfizer and Moderna, they're putting a lot of money behind these vaccines and the promotion of these vaccines.
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at the stock prices of Pfizer and Moderna over the last few years. Like, they've clearly benefited from, the shareholders have clearly benefited from this. And I'm not saying they've had a hand in creating COVID or anything like that, but they've definitely capitalized on it.
Yeah.
And that's not a crime in itself, but
True.
when you're manipulating, I think when you're manipulating the media and the people into having to have your vaccine, mandating it and things like that, to where, it's really only benefiting you in a way, because you're mandating like millions of people to get the vaccine, and then they have to, the governments are paying for the vaccine. So it's like, well, you're the one making the money off this, and then you're not being transparent with what's in the vaccine. Like the FDA said that they would release, or I think it was like in a federal court where they were saying they would release like the documents detailing what was specifically in the vaccines over the next like 70 years or 100 years. And it was like, well, what's the point of that? Well, most of us will be dead by the time like all these documents have been published. So it's like,
I wasn't aware. Now I want to look into this, because I never heard that they were hiding the specifics of the vaccine.
Well, specifics isn't like
what it's made of.
Yeah, like the extreme, like they have like the kind of like I guess the basic components of it, but like more in depth, like it's just crazy to me. Like, if there's nothing to hide, why not be transparent? Why not share this information? Like, I don't understand that. You want people to trust you. You want people to take your vaccine for the betterment of society, of humanity. Okay, well then be transparent. What is in this thing? What are the actual side effects? And trust the people to make the decision for themselves.
There's a lot to say about that. First off, I definitely want to jump on the point of allow people to make the decision for themselves. Because I have noticed there's a lot of clamping down on opposing schools of thought. Like, any school of thought that opposes the validity and the safety of the vaccine is very often being shut down, silenced, shunned, being seen as you're almost a bad person in a lot of circles for even questioning whether these are valid, or for opposing the facts that they are laying out. And for example, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this video gets pulled off of YouTube, but I fuck with Spotify because I'm pretty fucking sure it'll stay on Spotify for this. I had a train of thought, but I forgot where I was gonna go with that. What were we talking about? Vaccine, blah blah blah. People's
ability to make the decision.
Yes.
To kind of go what you said, man. It's almost like the government and the institutions don't trust the people to make decisions for themselves, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous to me, because when you start saying you don't trust the people who elected you and are paying you via their tax-paying dollars, if you don't trust them to make decisions, well, then you're going to start making the decisions for them, and that's no longer a free country, a free society. That's leaning more towards communism, towards communist China, like things like that, and that's not what we stand for here in America. Like, that's not the American way of life. That's not how we do things.
That is very difficult, because it seems like when something like a pandemic breaks out, something that is incredibly chaotic, that sometimes it might be better. I'll issue the example of Putin in Russia. I've heard people from Russia giving like pro-Putin sentiments, and their argument being that it was such a corrupt, chaotic, fucked up place beforehand that they almost needed someone with an iron fist. And I've heard the same for dictators in the Middle East, that when an environment and context is so chaotic, and we'll say that maybe in the pandemic things get incredibly chaotic, you might, and this, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, I don't necessarily believe this, but you might need someone with like an iron fist to come and control this, because this is a state of, it's almost like we're at war essentially with this pandemic, and maybe we can't exactly risk having people be hesitant to take the vaccine, because then if we're hesitant for people to take the vaccine, maybe COVID will keep being a problem and our economy will suffer, and then our state could collapse. So we're kind of panicked, so we're going to just put a vice grip over the society and make sure like we get the vaccine and we absolutely control COVID. But then that's a slippery slope, right? Because like what you're talking about, we're a democracy and we value a lot of freedom for people to make their own choices, to question government decisions, things along those lines. And it's hard for me to see exactly what the right choice is here. Oh, but building on what you were saying earlier about if they have nothing to hide, why don't they just share it with everybody? And I've heard the same argument for people, and maybe this is a bad comparison, but I've heard the same argument used for people's information, right? If you have nothing to hide, well, maybe the government should just be able to have all access to all your data, all your information, because if you have nothing...
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, because if you have nothing to hide, then let us see, well, just to keep everyone safe.
That's a completely different story there. That's an invasion of your personal privacy. Like, the government does not have the right to come into your cell phone. That's your personal property. It's your personal, like, that's like an extension of you, of yourself. And to see your conversations, your private conversations with your significant other, your family members, or whatever it may be, like, they don't have the right to do that unless you're suspected of a crime and then you go through the proper channels. I'm completely fine with that. But I don't think, like, the government definitely does not have the right to just do whatever they want to do. Like, there has to be checks and balances, and we have to hold the government accountable. Like, we shouldn't give them the ability to make those kind of decisions, to just go and do what they want. Like, just go, take people's cell phones and data and things like that just because they can. Like, we have to keep them in check in a sense like that, and keep the spotlight on them, if you want to say it like that. But yeah, I think for me personally, it's an inherent mistrust of government in some ways. I think government is good for a lot of things, but at the end of the day, the purpose of the government, in my opinion, is to protect the people from enemies outside that would do us harm, and to preserve our way of life. And all this extra things, and that I see the government doing, it's just, to me, it's like we give them an inch and they take a mile, and give them a little bit of power because we want more security, we want to feel safe and secure, but then they take that, they run with it.
That leads me into okay, before I go down that path, because then I definitely want to talk about Trump and political tension, because that's always a fun conversation. But before we go into that fun water, the point I wanted to make earlier is regarding the vaccine. I'm not sure of their argument behind why they would want to keep things secret. I haven't looked into this, but let's say they have a patent on their vaccine. I don't know if this is true, but let's just play with this thought for a second. Let's say it's a patent. We don't want people copying it because then we'll lose money. We won't be able to make a profit. And then that kind of comes into an argument of a company's right to keep something like that private, even when it's impacting literally everybody on a matter as important as a pandemic.
So I definitely think a company, a private institution, has the right to keep things secret when it's voluntary, when people have the choice to choose the vaccine for themselves. But when it's being mandated, when it's being forced on people, and people are not, they're being like, hey, you can't, if you don't get this vaccine, you can't go to work.
Yeah.
Well, then I want to know what's in the vaccine. So if you're forcing me to get the vaccine, I want to know what's in it. I want to know the risk. I want to know all these things. I want you to be transparent with me. But and like I said, it goes back to the choice thing. If you're making me get it, I want to know what's in it. But if it's my choice, well then yeah, you have the right to, it's because I'm assuming the risk at the end of the day. Like,
yeah.
And if you're making, it's.
I like that. That's a solid point. The fact that it's forced on you in a lot of ways. Like, you don't have to take it. You could just not work.
Yeah,
what kind of option is that?
Yeah, they're making you out to be a criminal for something that you don't want in your body. It's crazy to me. It's
or
crazy.
to at least know what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, it's crazy to me how and it's crazy to me how our society has just given up these freedoms that have been earned over the last 2 centuries.
It seemed like a similar thing happened after 9/11. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to continue.
Yeah, it's kind of sad though that we were so quick to give up our freedoms just to feel a little more to just feel like a little safe, against something that, if you're a healthy human being, if you're a healthy individual, you have a 99% chance of surviving this. It's like the cold, it's not gonna, 9 times out of 10 it's not gonna. I mean, you have a chance, a more of a chance of dying from the flu, than this thing. If I understand if you have underlying health conditions, if you're diabetic, my dad's diabetic, and I understand taking precautions.
Like I was happy when my parents who were older, when they got the vaccine, I'm like, you were at much more risk than I am. I don't want to.
And now sitting here, I don't agree with the vaccine, but I'm not going to sit here and judge someone for getting it because that's their decision. It's your decision, man. But I also feel like people should respect me and my decision for not wanting to get the vaccine, and that's clearly not what's happening. There's pressure from government, from individual institutions pressuring people into getting the vaccine, and it just makes you wonder. There's got to be an ulterior motive behind that. Like, why? What's the upside? Why do you want me to get this vaccine so much, that you're willing to essentially take away my right to work, my right to, a peaceful existence,
The best argument I've heard pro-vaccine is probably along the lines of you're able to spread COVID for a lesser amount of time, and I don't recall, that actually might be wrong, but if it's right, then that would be the strongest argument I've heard, that like, okay, if you have the vaccine, you're contagious for a lesser amount of time, as opposed to if you're not vaccinated, you're more likely to contaminate people for a longer amount of time. But even still, if like us, we're healthy and we don't want to take it for whatever reason, we don't trust it at the moment. Yeah, it is weird. I don't know the motives behind wanting to really force people to take it, because you could use the fear argument of, oh, people are so afraid, they just want things up and running and working, so quit fucking like slowing things down. I don't necessarily think we are slowing things down by not being vaccinated, but quit slowing things down and just take the fucking vaccine. Like, quit bitching about it, just take it. But there is something weird about it, considering all the things we've just discussed, how safe we are if we actually were to get it. And if we're going to infect people, but anybody who's at risk has already taken it, then who are we really putting in danger? Are we putting in danger the person who's at risk but doesn't trust it and doesn't want to take it? Okay, well then they're kind of taking their risk on themselves.
It's funny you say that, because we've seen like a lot of the population has gotten the vaccine, and now you see the government and Pfizer and Moderna coming out, and Johnson & Johnson as well. You see these entities coming out saying, oh, we got to get the booster, oh, it's going to be a seasonal thing, and it's just like, okay, when is this going to end? Like, at what point do we say, okay, enough is enough? Like, I'm not going to do, like, what's next? Like, if they are able to do this, if they are able to force people to get this thing and continue getting the boosters and have the population so enthralled, so hypnotized into believing this lunacy, what's next? Like, where does it stop? Because if they have the power to do this, what's stopping them from doing something sinister, something crazy down the line? That's what kind of scares me in a sense, is like, where does it end?
And then I think that's a good segue into Trump. So okay, the area where I grew up and where I lived is this pretty liberal area. So for me, when I hear arguments about pro-Trump, it was always through the internet. It was always through a middle person, essentially. I was never getting it directly from the source. So I want to know, is there anybody like in your community, in your life, who's voted for, or even if you supported him, like why? Why do you think people were so pro-Trump? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I'm from Alabama. I'm from the South, so we have that stigma of Republican and all that. And yeah, I would say that I do. I have people that I know and friends that I know that have supported Trump, and I think the reason for that is because he approached like his run for presidency with the idea of draining the swamp, draining the corruption. And people are so fed up, I think on both sides, Democrat and Republican, they're so fed up with the corruption in D.C. Like, they're so tired of lies and being, and being just manipulated. And he kind of came there with and brought this idea of, we're going to drain the swamp, we're going to get rid of the corrupt, and I think he bit off a little more than he could chew, because he didn't do what he said he was going to do in that sense. But
do you think he tried? Do you think?
I think he tried, but I think it's I think is a lot harder than we think. I think there's deep pockets. There's people in power that we don't know about. You know, you could say shadow government, all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
no, I mean that's not even. I don't think that's people make it out like when you talk about what's the term for the dark government? It's like I can't remember the exact.
It's like shadow government or something like
that.
Something like that. I know what you're talking about though. Yeah,
but there are people like heads of CIA, FBI that stay in term through multiple presidencies. They have a lot of sway over what laws get put into place and what people do. There are a lot of lobbyists, like people that fund the DNC and the what's the Republican GOP. Yeah, and that fund them like heavily. And if you think they don't have a lot of sway over who gets picked and what their agendas are, then I don't think you understand exactly how money and politics dance together, because there are a lot of big players who control who gets picked and what they do once they're picked.
Oh yeah, it's and that's kind of sad, because these elected representatives are supposed to represent the people of their districts and of their states, and it's a lot of times they do that in a sense, but also oftentimes they don't. They're in a sense representing whoever pays them the most money, whoever donates most to their campaign, and that's on both sides, Democrat and Republican, and that's sad. That's not what our forefathers envisioned for the United States, and that's something that I think term limits for Congress would fix a lot of that. I think it would start fixing the problem.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Like, why does the president have a term limit, but a lot of other very high-level people who are high-level in branches that are supposed to be equal to the presidency, why don't they have term limits? That's very strange.
It is a good question. And I think I do support a lot of congressmen and women that are pushing for term limits, because I think that just adds another check and balance within our system. Because when you have people that are staying 20, 30 years in government, when you're in government, you're supposed to be there to serve the people, not to benefit, not to line your pockets, not to come up with policies.
When you find politicians that are millionaires, like tens if not hundreds of millionaires, from being a politician, like, is that really what you're supposed to be getting from it?
I mean, I'm not against wealthy people running for office and making getting elected, and I'm not even against when you're in office making wise investments and becoming wealthy. That's what America's all about, is working hard, making good investments and securing your future for your family. But what I do have a problem with is when you are getting insider information, you're using your position of power to influence policies and things like that can benefit your pocketbook.
Yep.
And it's blatantly obvious that there's a lot of insider trading going on with Congress, and I mean you shouldn't be able to do some of the things that they're doing, and it's.
Have you seen anybody that you really support, that you you look at them and you're like, this is a politician I trust, and do I actually want to put a lot of force behind?
There's a few that I like in a way. I haven't really dove into it too much, honestly, but I like Dan Crenshaw and some of his ways and or some of his practices and things like that. I also like Tulsi Gabbard.
It's funny that
she's unique. She's got a unique perspective on things, and I like that. I like Madison McCawthorn. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I think he's young and he has a lot of views that I don't particularly like, but he represents. I think he represents the newer generation, and what kind of like the way things are. I don't want to say the way things are going, but like he represents a generation that I don't know. I guess is kind of more willing to fight than the millennial generation in a sense, because he's young. He's young for Congress. He's
I actually haven't heard of that guy.
24. Yeah, he's I think he's North Carolina congressman. I think some district in North Carolina. I think.
And so when I look at Dan Crenshaw and Tulsi Gabbard, they seem genuine. They seem like, because I remember when I was a kid in middle school doing projects and we were told watch presidential debates, and it was during Obama when he was running for president. It struck me, even as a kid, that they aren't answering the question.
Yeah. Well, they deflect.
Yeah, and that pissed me off even as a kid. But when I look at a Dan Crenshaw or Tulsi, it seems like they actually answer the question. Like they actually care about the people. Like they aren't being bought and sold. And maybe I'm ignorant for thinking that maybe I'm missing some other way they're being influenced, but it doesn't seem that way to me. And it's kind of funny because for a lot of my life, politics didn't really matter. Like when I was growing up, even if I heard my parents or adults talking about it, they never talked about it with much like vigor. But that changed a lot when Trump was Trump was running. I've never heard so much hatred and emotional content behind presidential candidates before in my life. That like really, holy shit, opened my eyes. Like, what the fuck's going on? Where did this come from?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to see how, like, you know, the left, right, whichever side of the aisle you're on, it's kind of interesting to see that, like, and I consider myself a libertarian. I'm not, I don't really lean right or left. I'm kind of in the middle.
Ditto.
And I'm kind of like, look, man, like, do whatever you want to do as long as you don't affect someone else and you obey the law and things like that, like, and minimal government. But yeah, it was crazy to me how, like, there was so much hatred. Like, the left was preaching, you know, oh my gosh, love everyone, do all, like, love, inclusiveness, all this. And all of a sudden, Trump happened, and they were like, oh my gosh, we need to, like, execute this guy. I'm like, you've been preaching for years, love and acceptance, and all of a sudden, this guy disagrees with you and how he wants to do things, and you're like, let's freaking kill this guy.
Dude,
Like,
it seemed like a lot of the hatred for Trump wasn't really based on his policies, it was a lot more his personality.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of his personal beliefs and the kind of insults and the shit talking he would do, it seems like that is what riled so many people up on the left, as opposed to actual, like I said, policies he was going for. It was like, you would elect a person like that, a person who would call women this, that, and the other, and just all the long list of, at times, I must admit, funny, but obviously at times very insulting, insults he would make throughout his career. And it seems like they were so aghast that a person, like a personality like that, could even run. But as I looked at him, it seemed like he is almost like a WWE equivalent to what politicians have been for a long time. Like,
well, you know, he wasn't very professional in a lot of ways in the way he addressed people and say he said some things that were not professional and probably shouldn't have been said. But, you know, then again, it's like he was kind of real about it. He was just like, hey, this is how it's going to be. This is how I am. Like, he was real, and the left didn't like that. A lot of the right didn't like it either. You know, Republicans didn't really like that. A lot of them didn't.
Yeah, it is interesting to remember that when he was running, a lot of the Republicans were like, no, until he actually won, and then they're like, all right, well, he's our guy. We'll support him.
Yeah, that's a great thing. You know, do you think he's going to run again in 2024? I think he'll run, but whether he has a chance of winning or not, I don't know. I mean,
I don't fucking know, dude. That's what, I'm not gonna lie, on January 6th, one of the main reasons I actually like put my ass in gear behind this podcast was when I saw that, I felt like it hit me on a strong emotional level. Like, okay, there really is a lot of unrest in this country, and maybe it's more hyped up than it actually is in reality. But the fact that Capitol Hill has never been, like, it was sacred ground. The fact that it seemed to have been, from what I've heard and saw, it was desecrated in a way that it really made civil war seem like a possibility. And I really can't, and I recognize that was a very small percentage of the people that actually supported him that went that crazy for it. But the fact that they got that far is...
Well, it was... Okay, so I'm gonna be careful on this one.
I got you. Go for it.
It's definitely...
I appreciate you even treading these waters with me.
Yeah, these are dangerous waters. But, you know, to be fair to both sides of this, you know, did Trump could have done a lot. If you're talking about the January 6th riots, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, so he did a lot to... Well, I wouldn't say he did a lot. There's the things he didn't do. He didn't just come out directly, you know, and kind of squash it right away. He kind of like let it like linger in a way. And I understand the rioters' position because there was a lot of like unclear like things going on. Like they were still doing the recount at that point, I think, or maybe it just finished the recount. Because Trump was saying how, you know, there was like rigged, like the election was rigged in Georgia, like the electoral counts and stuff like that, and Arizona and like a bunch of states were like, he was saying how like it was like people, what was it? ballot, like there were like fake ballots and things like that. There was like a whole conspiracy behind it. But I think he could have done more to kind of put people at ease. But that's what he wanted. He wanted some kind of pull like a trick out of his hat to kind of stay in office, I think, in a way. And I think a lot of people really did think that the election was rigged, and there were a lot of things that kind of proved their point in a way, in some ways.
Like what?
Well, there were some videos from, I think it was, I don't know what county Atlanta's in, but the county that Atlanta's in that showed some of the I don't know what they're called, but the workers that kind of like facilitate the processing of the ballots and things like that. That they were like filling out like blank ballots, and they were just checking like by the hundreds of them, and there was like all these leaked videos from like Georgia and like Arizona and things like that. They were like clearly showing like people were just filling out just blank ballots and like marking it for Biden and things like that. And they got leaked to, I think, Project Veritas. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
that name sounds familiar. I don't remember what.
They're like an investigative journalist group. They've exposed like a ton of corruption, not just within government, like within corporations, things like that. But there was a lot of leaked videos and things like that made people. They were like, well, there was hundreds of ballots that were like faked and it's wrong. Like they saw that, and that was evidence enough for them to protest. And I think it got out of hand, and things were done that they shouldn't have stormed the Capitol. That was wrong. But at the same time, like there was like no security. Like it's the capital of the United States. There should be more security than that. Like
I think there are also conspiracies on the other side that are saying that Trump kind of like made sure the police force was weaker on that day.
Well, Trump didn't. He doesn't have any authority on that for that area.
I'm just saying.
I think that would fall to the mayor of D.C. or the congressional house. I would think. I don't know. I think there was definitely that was an uncertain time for this country. But
it was. I've heard someone say that one of the staples of America, one of the most important parts that make us different from the majority of societies throughout history, is the fact that we've had peaceful transfers of power, like from president to president, for the majority of our history, and that is something extremely new in history. And there were a lot of historians were like their ears were perking up, and they started to stare a little more closely when the Biden-Trump election came around, and he was still fighting to stay in even after the votes came in and they said he lost. And that's probably one of the biggest things that scared me, that even after, and from what I understand, a lot of the judges that Trump put into power and that he picked to, I forget on what exact committee, so I'm going to sound a bit like an ass here, but that they said a lot of they essentially threw out the vast majority of cases when it came to the votes being fraudulent over Joe Biden. And so I'm like, okay, so the judges that he put in power are saying that most of these votes are valid, and yet he's still saying that he should stay in power because they're illegitimate. That was something that it worried me, because I wasn't sure how many people believed and would be willing to fight. Because if you genuinely thought the country was stolen from you and the presidency was stolen, then I could justify fighting, right?
Well, that's the thing is, I think a lot of people did. I think a lot, especially on the right, people were like, hey, what the heck is going on? And for instance, I remember watching election night that night, and had a couple of friends over from college, and we were watching it, and we stayed up all through the night. We waited to the whole thing, and throughout the whole thing. And I think it was Michigan or Wisconsin. It was one of those states where the county population was I don't know, I want to say just for example, it was 1 million. And then all of a sudden it was 1.4 million votes, or it was we have 1.5 million ballots, but there was only 1.4 million registered voters in the county, or in that area for instance, and that happened several times. There was more ballots than there was registered people to vote in the county. So it was what? It was what is this? And that's what I think fostered a lot of the mistrust within the Republican Party and on the right. And I don't know, my opinion on it doesn't really matter. I think
that you're an American, right?
Well, it does, but there's some things I can't say, but exactly what I believe. But I think in the end, the American people are. They want the truth. They want transparency. They want to be able to make the best decision for themselves and their families, and they don't really like it when the waters are murky. Like when the information's like, okay, we don't really know what to believe, and I think that's what happened. I think there was a lot of like, whoa, Trump was saying this. There were some things that kind of like validated what he was saying, and so it scared people, and then the media, the inherent distrust of the media. So.
Yeah. that I think that is one of the staples of our generation. If you gotta leave soon,
good to go.
Yes, sir.
Good.
And I don't know if you turned your mic off, but there you go. All right.
We're good to go now? You hear me now?
Yes, sir. All right, so where do we leave off? Trump?
Yeah, Trump and the inherent mistrust of a lot of people on the right, and I think to the left too. I think there's just a lot of mistrust within our society nowadays, and I think the government hasn't done a lot to kind of quell that in a way. They haven't been as transparent as people would like, I think, and that's the reason for the mistrust. And if you just look at the debt issue, like that's like a huge red flag, because I'm like, that's a massive issue that is going to affect our kids, generations, like the next generation. It's going to affect us and our generation as well, but like it's going to continue to affect our country for generations, and nothing's being done about it. And like the national debt doubled, I think, over this pandemic. And it's like politicians, they're just ignoring the problem, and the few that are trying to fix it, it's just like they're just written off.
That's a weird one, man, because I've heard opposing arguments when it comes to debt, and I've heard some people say weirdly that debt can actually be used as a good thing when it comes to like a country level, that it can be used as leverage with other countries. Well, frankly, I feel like an ass because I don't remember the specific arguments used, and it sounds like on its face like a fucked up thing, like you're in debt. That's a shitty thing. A lot of people have control over you and what your country is doing. Like you should probably be getting out of that.
Well, so yes and no. I would say, I think that the problem with debt for us, for America, no one's gonna come make us pay them back. Like China's not gonna come invade our shores and make us pay them back. I don't think it works like that. I think it's more the trust in our dollar, the trust in our economy, and from foreign investors. Like if the American government cannot pay its debts back, cannot pay its bills, well,
why would I do business with them?
Why would I do business? Exactly. It's a trust thing. And yeah, so and a lot of the debt is borrowed from the future of the American people, like Social Security and things like that. Like it's not just borrowed from foreign governments. And that's like Social Security. I don't know if I'm ever going to see that. I'm 23. I've been paying into it for a couple of years now. I don't think I'll ever see it, honestly. Like, they keep pushing the date back further and further, and you ask yourself why.
That is something I've heard whispers about in political circles, that people might never see, like you're saying.
And to me, like, the idea of Social Security, like, when it was first... Oh, sorry. Yeah, the idea, it's a good thing. It was like giving people a safety net. But the problem is, when you make people do, like, you're making me do this, you're taking this certain amount of money out of my check every month. And the interest on it is like atrocious. It doesn't even beat inflation hardly. And then you promise to give this back to me at 65 now? I think 65 now. Could be mistaken. 65. I know it's in your 60s, like mid 60s. I think
60s. That's so far away.
6 years old, when you could literally put the same amount of money just throw it into an S&P 500 index fund or something and let it sit, and you would be fine. You would be set for retirement. Like you would be, but that's the problem. Is like that alone right there is why people have inherent mistrust in the government. Like they've mismanaged money, they've mismanaged the people's money time and time again, and there's no accountability for it. There's no one's paying the price. Like who's going to prison? Who's going to prison for mismanaging this? Because you've stolen from the American people. That's what you've done.
Dude, that's a bit. When you hear about the 2008 crisis, and we were just kids when that came, right?
Yeah.
The mortgage crisis. I think we're still feeling the ripple effects of like the lack of trust that came from that, and exactly what we were talking about. That a lot of the biggest bankers that were, from what I understand, largely responsible for that collapse happening, they got bonuses.
Well, it's just corruption, it's just corruption at the highest levels. And I'm not saying that the 2008 housing crash was directly the government's fault. I don't think that, but I think there was just a lot of corruption within the government and within corporations that facilitated that allowed that to happen. And it's going to happen again. At some point, there'll be another market crash, there'll be another collapse, and it'll be, from corruption, I think. And yeah, I think that just continues to give people a reason to mistrust the government and the elite, if you want to say that.
That's a weird. I feel like that's one of the side effects of this age of information. It's a strange, I think, side effect of having this much access to information from a million different sources about a million different topics, that a lot of people end up losing trust in a lot of, the institutions that were stereotypically the places you would go to find this information, because now there are a lot of people countering that they're legitimate. There's a lot of lack of trust in corporations and government because a lot of corruption has been exposed through this information. And I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how to move forward to increase trust. And
sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but I think one way we can increase trust, and give trust back to the American people or help the American people have trust in the government again, is to start with accountability. Accountability with, for instance, with Pfizer and the vaccine. The government has made it to where they're immune from or exempt from lawsuits with this vaccine thing. So you can't. So like, let's say you get the vaccine, or your wife or your cousin or whatever gets a vaccine, and they die from it. And it's like direct, the doctors know, the autopsy shows this was directly from the vaccine. You cannot go sue Pfizer for that. They're exempt. The federal government has made them exempt from the consequences. So to me, yeah, you should definitely be more interested on that. It's very interesting how they're exempt from the consequences, and it's just, to me, it's like the government makes these big decisions. We give them the power to make these decisions on our behalf. They manipulate, they lie in a lot of ways, and they misuse their power, and there's no accountability. No one's going to prison. You can't even take them to court. You can't do a lot of things. There's no accountability, and I think that's why there's a lot of mistrust.
I'm gonna do a quick, a weird and kind of jagged 180 real quick. What do you think are some of the best parts of our government or our country?
So yeah, I would say some of the best parts of our government are the checks and balances. I love this country, and we have the greatest. I think, in my opinion, we have the greatest system of checks and balances. In a way that if you look at China, if you look at Russia, really there's only one person or one party, air quote, that's running things. They're really running the judiciary system. They're running, the court. They're running.
And all the businesses in that country.
Exactly. And in our country, it doesn't really work like that. The people elect judges. The local level. We elect local officials, locals for school boards, and things like that. The power is given to the people, and I think that's what makes us special. That's what makes us great. Is it's not one person or one even political party. It's the people. It's people at the local level with your local schools, and then it's your counties, and then your cities, and your state governments, and then it's the federal level.
I was talking to an ex-teacher the other day, and we were kind of spitballing about this similar topic, and he made an interesting point, and this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately, that one of the best ways to improve trust in our government and to reduce corruption is to get involved in local elections and local politics, where you have a much more direct impact on who gets put in what positions of power as opposed to a presidential election.
And I love how you say that, because I was going to actually bring this up, is, I've been talking about the corruption in the government, we kind of have, and there is a lot of corruption, and I think one thing that we can do, our generation can do, is we can, like you said, get involved. We can go run for we may not ever be president or congressman or anything like that, but we can run for school boards.
Yep.
We can go to the town hall meetings and the meetings like that, and we can make a difference. And that's something that when I was even younger, a few years ago, I didn't really think I could do. I didn't really know anything about it. But just watching people like Candace Owens and like Dan Crenshaw and people like that, and Charlie Kirk, like I know those are a lot of those are right wing guys, but they kind of made a stand. They kind of like, for whatever, if you agree with them or not, that's beside the point. But they've put up a fight. They're going to these school board, city council meetings, and they're making their voices heard. And I think that's something that we need to do more in our generation. We need to go to these things and fight for what you believe in. Like if you don't like the way things are being done on city council or whatever, then run for city council.
Yeah, that's
or vote for somebody that you believe can make the changes that you want made.
Yep, that's very true, because it's weird when you live in this system your entire life. It's very easy to forget when you talk about a place like China and Russia, the other superpowers of the world, that I don't know how easy it is, or even if at all possible, to do what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Like you see corruption, you see something happening at the higher levels, and to get involved, like if millions of people get involved at the small levels, that would eventually add up to changing something on the bigger levels. It seems like they don't even have the opportunity to do that.
Well, it's like I think I'll go even further to say, I would say that it's our responsibility.
Yeah.
It's our duty.
This is our fucking country.
Yeah, it's to run for those to run for those small local things and or support someone, and let your voice be heard. And regardless of which way, right or left, I think getting involved and trying to be the change in a way. Like first, first get yourself right, I guess,
Yep.
and figuring out what you believe and what you want, and then going to the next level and like to the councils and and being involved in the school system, like at your local library, like here, just
Yep.
be involved in your community. And that's something that I think we really lack in our generation, is we're not as involved. We're too busy like trying to get rich and famous and popular on TikTok and Instagram, and we're slowly losing our values, our way of life slowly being eroded away. And I think that's something that we are kind of waking up to. That we're kind of starting to see, hey, if we don't
get our shit together,
if we don't put our foot down and like start standing up for what we believe, and we're just letting people letting these schools put masks on children. Like, to me, I would be like, no, like you're not doing that to my kid. Like, but a lot of parents didn't stand up for that. They were just like, oh, these guys are in authority. Let's obey them. And I'm like, man, like I would have went to the school board like meetings and things like that and be like, hey, I don't agree with this. Like, let's do something different. Like,
and just the fact that you're willing to have that discussion.
Yeah, it's a lot of people just rolled over and just like accepted it, even though they didn't agree with it. They didn't, and I'm not saying like let's take up arms and go like do something crazy. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But we have a responsibility to challenge the status quo in the right ways, legally, like by the law, by the right ways. Like, there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things, and then we have a duty and responsibility to do that, not just for ourselves, but for our children.
Yeah, for everyone we care about.
Yeah,
because what stops a country from collapsing? Because that's a theme I keep hearing, that America is like, we're Rome on the fall right now. And what stops a collapse like that? It's this kind of what we're talking about right now. Or at least that's, I think, a huge part. Grassroots efforts. Yeah. And without that, it's not just going to get better magically. It's not like the corrupt people are going to stop trying to take more and more influence and get more and more control.
I think it's, like, people have to stand up for what they believe, and they have to try to implement change wherever they can, in the right ways, like I said. But I think a lot of it is people are afraid. Like, people are afraid, like with this vaccine, like if you don't get the vaccine, if you don't do what Big Pharma and the government says, like, they're going to take away your ability to provide for your family.
That is a real threat.
It's a fear issue.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that even if I had kids and like, that would be a hard decision, even though I'm against it and I don't agree with it at all. But like, you're telling me you're going to take away my ability to feed my kids, like, it's like, oh man, I really got to think about this now. Like, this is like takes it to the next level, So I think it's a fear issue. Like, a lot of people are just scared. they're scared to make a stand because they might get fired from their job or bullied or whatever it may be. They're scared.
And when you combine that with cancel culture, it becomes a very weird time to be living in, because whether or not I agree with you in all the points you're making, the fact that we sit down and have this conversation, that seems to be way more important than whether we agree on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And the fact that a lot of people are now so afraid of opposing, not even opposing vaccine, because if you don't get vaccine, you can't work. Maybe even if you question whether or not you should get the vaccine, now you're shunned by your community. Now your kids are maybe getting bullied more. Maybe now you could also lose your job, and all these sorts of, depending on the community you're living in, simply because you're opposing what all these people are telling you is right. That's a huge theme I hear right now, is the fight against freedom of speech.
Yeah, and I think it's freedom of speech is like essential to our way of life, essential to democracy, and I think you should totally be able to sit across from somebody, have have views that don't agree with each other, don't align, and be completely fine with having a conversation, disagreeing, respectful, and they're entitled to believe what they want to believe, and you're entitled to believe what you want to believe and what you want to think, and you're entitled to say that, and then you can still walk out of the meeting and be friends and be a normal human being, be a citizen, and but I don't think that taking away someone's ability to speak it's not American. It's not the way we do things. You have the right to question. You have the right to say, I don't agree with this. Let's talk about it. Let's argue. Let's discuss this.
Yeah.
That's how society improves, is by discussing things and figuring out a better way and get, you know what I'm saying?
One of the best arguments I heard the other day pro free speech is that things like the women's ability to vote, things like the civil rights movement, those only happened because we allowed freedom, because we allowed a great degree of freedom in speech.
Yeah.
And we allowed people to oppose the status quo without getting iron fisted down.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of things are the way things are happening now is people can't speak out against the vaccine, or they get what's it on Facebook where what's when they flag you or whatever,
yeah.
Post about the vaccine. I'm like, well, to me that's crazy, because the American people deserve to hear an opposing view, like Joe Rogan or doctors that may not agree with the FDA's decision.
Then that does get weird, because amongst the valid opposition to the status quo, there exists a lot of bullshit.
Yeah, and I think people honestly have to have the common sense and the ability to determine for themselves whether or not this is a valid argument or this is just bullshit.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, because with the internet and with these a million different sources of information, it now becomes extremely difficult to really... It takes a lot of time, just inherently, because there are so many sources of opposing information. It takes a lot of time to dig into all these different arguments and figure out. And so when I hear the common sense argument, it becomes how do you form that common sense while still maintaining good relationship with your kids and your friends and having a job and having hobbies? Because that's almost like a job in and of itself, searching for the truth amidst all this. And so when I see a Facebook or a Twitter or YouTube trying to censor, it seems like they're trying to do that for people, in part, because we can also talk about the corrupt motives behind that, but it seems like they're in part trying to remove a lot of the BS so that you can look for information and have it, like you say, for the common man, just be clearly there, and then you can make your common sense choice from these reliable facts. And they're like, all right, these are non-reliable facts, we're going to get rid of them. But largely, I don't like the way they're doing it, because it does seem to have a lot of political motives. Like when Biden was running for president, right? And the Hunter Biden story that got covered up en masse because they were afraid. It seemed largely that the reason was they're afraid that might make him lose if this becomes widespread. And it's now I don't really trust your ability to censor, to justly censor. I don't trust that you're good at censoring now.
And I think to me, there should be no form of censoring on free speech. On social media, in person, you should be able to say what you want to say. Now, that being said, I don't think you should be able to threaten someone or there's a limit, of course, but I think you should be able to disagree and say what you want to say on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you want, because that is a constitutional right. And I understand the argument of like it's a private business. They can. I understand that argument. I sympathize in a way, but a lot of people disagree with me, my friend group, on this. But I think a constitutional right circumvents a business's right to censor people because it is their platform. I understand.
And it's weird because it's like their platform is now a public space. Like it's not really private.
It's a definitely murky waters. It's a very gray area. But like I would say, if your business or your platform is violating the majority of people's a constitutional right, well then it's kind of like you don't. I don't know. It's kind of like you should. Maybe the business should even lose that ability to have their personal right. I don't know. It's a good argument. It's a tough argument because I'm for rights for businesses and like I'm all for that, but it's definitely a gray area. It's interesting. I would like to hear other points of view on that one.
No, fuck yeah, but like I agree totally because I would love to hear a million different. Have you ever heard of the echo chamber?
No, I don't think I have.
That one of the biggest problems today is that people get caught in all their feed will essentially show them points that agree with them. Because a lot of the algorithms, when it comes to a YouTube, for example, what they show you, what they recommend to you next in the list of videos, the algorithm will show you, and there's a great documentary about this on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, I think it's called. They'll show you things that are most likely to get you to spend as much time on their app as possible, right? Like that's their business platform. And it turns out that one of the best ways to do that is by show you things that you agree with. More and more and more and more things you agree with. And if you don't know that that's how they do it, and you're not constantly trying to search out strongly opposing views, which is, by the way, well, like I said, when we were talking about the vaccines earlier, and I was looking at CNN's views on the vaccines as well as Joe Rogan's, a lot of the CNN, it hurt to watch those videos because they disagreed so strongly with what they're saying. It's like it literally hurt emotionally, like in my gut, to hear it. So it's fucking, it's actually pretty difficult to break out of this. They call it an echo chamber because you're always hearing back the things they're saying. You're like, oh, I'm right. All these people are agreeing with me. I'm right. I must be right. And then people are doing the same in Facebook. Like I'm only looking at people's feed that agree with me. And so you could watch thousands of hours of videos and look at hundreds of people, and you think you're getting this strong view of reality, but in fact you're getting a lot of just feedback loops of what you already agree on.
Well, I think, to branch off from that statement, it's a lot of people don't want to hear an opposing opinion. Like especially college age students, like you go to like most universities and you're religious in any way, and you're advocating for your religion, like they'll come out there like yell in your face, they'll take your signs, like I mean I've seen that happen to JSU, like my school, like, and now.
Well, so what happened? Because I'm like, were people saying like pro Christianity signs?
So there was like a group of extreme, I can't remember what sect of Christianity, but it was like some extreme Christian Christian group, and they came out to campus, and there's a lot of Christian ministries on JSU, and there's a lot of other different religions as well, but and most of the students, they enjoy it, they go to these things, and it's great, like everybody gets along, it's peaceful. But this group decided to come out, and they were like in this court, and there's like a courtyard in Jacksonville, and like they set up their like little booth and things, and they were saying how homosexuality is wrong and things like that. That's what they were arguing, and no one was forced to go to it. No one was forced to like stay. But they were just simply, that was just their point of view. That was what they thought, and they gave their reasoning. And within like a couple hours, like they had like a group of students like surrounding them, and they were like screaming at them like, get out of here, like. And I don't agree with the way things were handled. Like that was very confrontational. Like that like you're gonna get attention when you do that. That's but they have the right to do that. They do. It is America. You have the right to go to a public area like.
And if your religion, that's a weird water, man. Because when your religion tells you like this specific way of being is wrong. Then, because maybe let's say in Christianity, fucking another guy's wife is wrong. Okay, pretty much everyone agrees with that. Stealing things is wrong. Pretty much everyone agrees with that. Being gay is wrong. Hold on, wait a minute. But to oppose that by just screaming in your face and like, you're not allowed to even say that.
Yeah, and to me, it's just like, regardless of whether or not you agree with that, they have the right to be heard. They have the right to say what is on their mind, to say what they believe. And if you don't agree with them, then walk away and leave. Yeah. Why do you need to get violent? And they didn't get violent in the sense they were like throwing things at everything.
Dude, you're in your face and yelling, that's very close to violence.
It was very close. Like the campus police had to call it and kind of like split it up, because it was just getting to the point where something it was like just a match could have like made things it was crazy. But like, to me, like, we're so hostile to each other nowadays. Like, we can't have that conversation. We can't just talk, regardless of if we disagree or agree with each other. It's it's got to be my way. It's got to be my opinion is the only right way. When in reality, that's not the case.
And it's interesting when we talk about the topic of being gay, and let's say with civil rights and things like that. I've heard some very interesting arguments describing how a lot of groups that were stereotypically oppressed and had it worse than most people in our country, whether we'll say that's black people or homosexual people in the last few decades, now like the pendulum was swinging in a way that their quality of life was lesser in many ways than most people. And now that it's swung the other way, and it's like, okay, now we're giving them more rights than ever before, more accepted than ever before in our society. It's like a lot of people want to take it so that they now have the power that their opposition used to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Can you pause it? I'm gonna shut the blinds, man.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I've been trying to like.
All right, yeah.
What was the question again? I
don't think this question is the topic of some people maybe getting drunk on power. The people that used to not have power, and they're giving it. They have more of it than ever before. Whether we're talking about certain civil rights movements or gay movement, that's probably not the right way to say it, but gay movement.
It's definitely not politically correct.
No, definitely not. But we know what I mean.
Yeah, I got you. I would say in some ways, yes. I don't. Whether or not you agree with someone, I think you should respect it, and you should respect their way of life, even if you disagree with it, and you don't want your family or your kids to believe that way or live that way, whatever it is, like adultery, whatever the case may be. But people are just so aggressive and violent just because you disagree with someone.
And it's just weird. For me, it seems almost like a fresh wound, Like, you used to live in a place where if I said I was gay, people would insult me. They would think I was a lesser person. They would kick me out of my family, like I would get disowned and shit like that. And now this, like, any people telling you that that's wrong now, it's almost you're like
hypersensitive.
Yeah, like almost a PTSD.
And that's
really on edge.
Yeah, the way things were done was wrong, in a lot of ways. And I think the pendulum has swung, like you said. It swung because now they're hypersensitive. They're like, oh, you're gonna bully me again. They don't want it to go back to that to that culture.
Understandably enough, but that doesn't seem to be the right way to do it. Just shouting in your face and like.
It's not. But and a lot of it, it's just that I think it's fear. They don't want it to go back to the way things used to be, and I don't think that's gonna happen. But
yeah, me neither. Yeah. But have you ever heard of Daryl Davis?
Actually, I haven't.
Oh, I love this guy. He's a black guy who was very interested into why people were racist. Like, how could you hate me without knowing me?
Is that the guy that went to Mississippi and converted 100 Klan members?
Yeah. But it's so fascinating because he never went about. He didn't go there with the intention to, I'm going to convert Klan members. Now, he went there with, I just want to have a conversation with you, a respectful conversation, and let me understand your point of view. And if I disagree with you, I will tell you why. And he would have these conversations with people, some that would extend over many years, and he would form friendships with these people, and they would simply leave as a result of having these rational conversations. They're like, you know what? I think you have a point.
Yeah, and that right there shows the importance of being a free speech, being able to question the status quo, to question things, and have a conversation.
Yeah, even about super controversial, heated shit like that.
Yeah, just have a conversation about it, and that's something that our generation has gotten away from, and we need to get back to it, man. We need to just be able to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Here we are. We're doing it.
Yeah, I don't even think we've like gotten on a topic of where we disagree with something. Like I don't know of anything yet. So.
No, I mean I think we've just had light disagreements.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I would like to even talk about what you disagree. Like that's something we disagree about. So
all right, let's see. What would be a heated? If anything comes to mind that you think is like a really controversial topic, shoot it out because that's a good one. What would be something to disagree?
I mean, like I'm a capitalist. I'm a very anti-socialist, communist kind of person. It's kind of like I said, I'm libertarian, so minimal government. Definitely anti-tax.
Yeah,
I hate taxes, man. Golly.
See, none of these I don't have any strong opposition to these things. Look, you know what? Let's keep going. We'll see. I'll jump out if anything pops out at me. But let's see. I want to get more into the personal waters now because I wonder a lot whether these big issues that we hear about. I've heard that it is a common theme in history that the most powerful people will hide the fact that they have incredible amounts of power and that they will distract people with the term is bread and circuses. Mm-hmm. Like when Rome was collapsing and when it was in a horrible state, they would have these incredible festivals and Colosseum events so that people come and they're kind of distracted. Like we give you free bread and we have a circus. So like, oh, look at this wonderful thing. But that can also be a war. A war can be a form of bread and circuses where you have this thing that's really important and it's drawing attention, but there's a much worse problem in the background that people aren't looking at. It's in the shadows.
Well, I love how you say it like that because I think there is a bigger issue going on right now, and I think that's the economy. I think inflation is huge right now, man. Like there was a couple months ago, I bought a jar of peanut butter for like $2.50 or some change like that. It's like $5 now. Like I think it was like $4.40.
And gas,
like,
bro.
Like I'm like, man, like I'm. Like people making decent wages, like it's now like man, like I really gotta like watch what I like just to survive, like peanut butter and like milk and like eggs, like basic things, and it's because of decisions that have been made in Congress and government that have led to this.
See, and now that could be maybe a strong argument so if we just all got vaccinated, the economy could just open up more confidently.
But that's the thing is, I think that goes back to just people are ignorant. They don't really know how our financial system works. And a lot of this is directed from the Fed, like the Federal Reserve and things like that. And
I heard we've been printing money like mad.
They printed so much money, dude, since the pandemic. It's insane. It's literally insane. Like you need to go look at the statistics on it, man. It's shockingly. It'll open your eyes to why are we not seeing this on CNN or like Fox? Like we're just not seeing it. But so I think what happened to me, what I kind of saw when the research I've done on it is, since COVID happened, there were kind of some signs like we were gonna go into a recession. Like that's kind of normal for an economy. You have ups and downs,
especially during a pandemic.
Yeah, especially during a pandemic. But what happened was they shut down everything for 30 days, and then people didn't go to work. So then they started not paying their bills. Couldn't we're a consumer. The American economy, the American people, we consume a lot of things. So people weren't consuming. They weren't going to the store. They weren't buying things. And people weren't going to work, so they weren't getting paid. So the government kind of had to do something to stimulate the economy to kind of keep it alive, keep the heart beating, and that was to lower the interest rate. And
interest rate of what?
So they lowered the interest rate on kind of FHA loans for houses and things like that. They can they're increasing the interest rates now to kind of the market's overheated right now in the housing market. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's crazy. People are buying houses left and right, and it's just insane. And that's because the interest rates have been so low these last year or 2 years. And so now to kind of like calm people down and kind of like cool off the economy, if you want to say it like that, they're raising the interest rates. And that like they kept the interest rates low. They didn't let the market determine the interest rate. They kept it low because like people were struggling during the pandemic. And then all of a sudden we had Congress give people like stimulus checks and things like that. And I understand the reason behind that, but I think that did more harm than good.
Why?
Instead of just opening the economy up and letting people go back to work at their own risk. Like, hey, you want to go to work, you can go to work. If you want to stay home and ride this pandemic out, by all means, you do.
I'll pose. We'll have some fun opposition now. The hospitals in our country, I heard they've been more stressed and more taxed. They have lost more money, and people have been more overworked during the pandemic than in an extremely long time. And that one of the risks of if we open the economy up and we just kind of let shit fly, like if you're willing to risk it and go out. One of the fears was we'll overload our hospital system. People won't be able to come in and even get services done. Maybe hospitals will have to start shutting down because they don't have money to even maintain their equipment and stay open anymore. People won't be able to get paid in the hospitals.
Yeah, so I don't agree with that. I think so the reason for that is I have several of my friend group back home. They have a lot of their wives are nurses, and this is a problem that we have created ourselves. And I say that because these hospitals are firing nurses that have not gotten the vaccine, so they are creating their own problem because there's already a nurse shortage. Okay, but now you're telling me I'm going to fire, even if it's 15%, 20% of the nurses that refuse to get the vaccine. I don't know exactly what the statistic is, but you're going to fire 15, 20% of your nurses because they refuse to get the vaccine. And then all of a sudden you're going to go over here to this press conference and say, oh man, we're short on nurses. We're overcrowded. There's so many people. Like, you just created your own problem.
Well, I think the problem with hospitals losing a lot of money was a problem before the vaccines were even available. Like during the height of the pandemic,
So what do you mean by like lose money? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, are you saying like that they were actively like losing money because they were accepting patients? Like, what do you mean by that?
I believe overloaded with patients. I don't remember the exact reason why, but if I remember correctly, it was they're overloaded with patients.
And so they were. I would definitely say that like some hospitals were definitely overloaded with patients. Like 100%, I agree with you on that. But as far as them losing money, I don't think so.
No, this is like that part I know for sure that now I can't even specify in exactly what way they were losing money.
I think I think I kind of get what you're saying. Like, so I know a lot of his hospitals like shut down outpatient care. Like, they wouldn't do anything like other than like emergencies and like COVID during the height of the pandemic. Like, if you needed a surgery for your knee, for your ACL or something like that, like something not like
I'm dying with
I'm dying, like something like, hey, like, oh, this like I need my I need my hand fixed or something like that, like something like not life threatening. Like, they wouldn't do that because the priority was COVID. So like they couldn't bill the insurance companies. Like, so that, yes, okay, I understand. Like, I see that, but at the same time, like, they made that decision. Like, and I get the reason, maybe because they were understaffed because they were getting overcrowded with patients. But at the same time, like, for each patient that was like diagnosed with COVID, like, the government sends them a check. Like, they get a check for every positive case of COVID. Like, these hospitals would test somebody, like, you test positive for COVID at this hospital, they would get a check, like, from the government for that. Like, it to me, that was like, that's incentivizing like the corruption within hospitals and the government. Because like, you're telling people that like, hey, if you test positive for COVID, or I think I want to be as accurate as I can, because in Florida they exposed a hospital for this, and I think the CDC, like during the height of all this, like the CDC was saying how, or something along the lines of, if someone like dies from COVID or something like that, like the hospital would get like a check, or like they would get paid for something. It was something like along those lines. And what ended up happening was somebody would die of
like a car accident,
mm-hmm. and they would have COVID, and then they would say, oh, he died from COVID, and they would get that check. And that was exposed like at a hospital in Florida. And that was so much corruption. So to me, like, there's just been a lot of corruption with this.
That's a weird one, right? Because corruption always seems to be possible. And in a situation like that, where, okay, it makes sense in a way to give more resources to people that need it more, right? Like if you're under more pressure, under more stress due to COVID, okay, funnel resources there because they need it, and these people don't need it as much, so we'll kind of take it away from there. And that, yes, it does seem to open the door to corruption, to people falsifying whether someone actually died of COVID or not. But maybe that's just a necessary evil that comes along with that.
I mean, but my question is, why was the government sending them checks for someone dying of COVID? Like, what? Why? Like,
well, maybe because more people are dying in this area from COVID, so to reduce the amount of people dying, and so to maybe have better early stage care for someone, we'll give them more money so that they can help them more.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of see that, but at the same time, like, my opinion is, like, if there's an issue, there's a problem with, like, the way things are done, open it up to innovation. Open it up to, like, let people come in with different ideas, like, expand the hospital or, you know, recruit from overseas doctors, you know, like, open up the floor to innovate, to innovation. Like, that's what it's all about. That's what America's, like, all about, is, like, innovating.
Are you saying they weren't doing that?
I'm saying there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of rules and regulations, and some of them are good. Some of them are to combat corruption and to combat, like, certain issues and things like that. But there's too much regulation, and I think too much regulation steals innovation, and that it's kind of shown in a lot of ways. Like,
what would be another example?
So, like, for instance, I guess I can kind of give you on this one. So my cousin is a applied electronics engineer, and he works for a fire suppressant company that, like, they do, like, fire suppressant systems for, like, Amazon and things like that. And he was telling me, he's just worked there for about 2 years. He was telling me how there are these electrical engineers and other engineers that are, like, super smart in his company and stuff, and they have created this product. And they have went to the state, and they have, like, legislated, and they've lobbied, and this is at a state level, for their product to be a requirement for, like, state, the word's slipping me. So, like, for, like, state inspection. So, like, I have to have a certain kind of light bulb that's, I'm just giving you an example, like, a certain type of light bulb that's going to be, like, great for the environment. Okay. And so, like, I create this light bulb, and I go lobby for this light bulb to be, like, mandatory in all these buildings. So it does benefit the environment, but it benefits me ultimately. And so, like, you kind of create a regulation to kind of protect yourself, like, and to kind of benefit yourself. Like, I wouldn't say create a regulation, but, like, lobby for a regulation that, like, benefits you.
So, like, I think I kind of got lost somewhere there. So you're saying they're creating these regulations so that no one can create a strong opposition product that up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, it kind of stifles. Like, my wording's kind of bad. Yeah, but, like,
no. I was fiddling with that, and that fucked with my ability to listen. But I'm tuning back in. It
kind of, like, stifles your competition. Like, they're taking away that competition aspect, and yeah, it's because it's making them rich. You know, it's, you know, the more they sell, the richer they get. But
and then that comes to a question of how much should we actually allow money to influence politics? Who gets elected? What gets what bills get passed and things along those lines. That's okay. But I wanna jump away from politics for a second. I want to dive more into the your own personal life, like, because this is a subject that deeply interests me, and we'll go as deep as you'd like to. I want to know, okay, first off, what is one of, like, the moments of greatest joy in your life? Like, what are the stories of something where you felt like this is one of the best points in my life?
Okay. That's a good one, man. There's been a few, I think, for me. When I was in high school, it was a junior year, and we won the state championship for basketball. And I was like, oh my god, like, that was, like, on a high, you know, like, I was, like, up there, like, on cloud nine, man. It was great. It was really great.
You crushed all the competition.
That was, dude, that was probably the first time in my life that I was really, like, up there on cloud nine, like, nothing could really touch me, you know, kind of.
I'm the shit.
Like, yeah, like, I'm great, man. I, like, have a ring and everything. It was great. The second time was a graduating infantry basic when I got my blue cord. It's like there's a ceremony you get and all that, and it was tough. It was tough getting through it, and it was just the culminating event, and it was just like I earned this through blood, sweat, and tears, man. Like this, like I earned this. You know, that was probably the second time for me, and then the third time was just recently graduating college and commissioning. Commissioning for me was a big moment because there's just such a long road getting there, like 4 years. And I was like, so many times where I was like, man, I don't know, I don't even know if I want to do this. Like, and then like finally seeing the reward pay off after all that early mornings and things like that.
And the grind, pushing through all that suffering, dude. This brings to mind. I was thinking about this a lot the other day. I was watching. You ever seen The Bronx Tale?
No, I don't think I have.
A great movie. I highly recommend it. It's free on YouTube. So anyway, there's a point where the main character he's in a car with all his friends and they're about to go do some fucked up shit, like throw Molotov cocktails into a bar. And he's like, I'm in here and I don't want to fucking be in here. A lot of shit was going down in his life. Like he was in hell essentially. And he's like, I don't fucking want to be in here, but if I leave, then I'm a pussy and I'll be shunned by my community and things along those lines. And the question that popped in my head is, how exactly should someone figure out the difference between, okay, this is a really tough goal, and all these doubts are creeping up. Like you're talking about, you were in college and there were times where like, I don't know if I want to fucking do this, but you stuck through it. And at the end of it, you were like, this was fucking worth it.
Yeah.
As opposed to a time where maybe you're doing something and these doubts are popping in your head, but those doubts are legitimate. Like, no, you should quit. You should actually stop this because you will regret it if you follow through with this thing. And if you want to jump
No, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, like, how exactly do you find out the difference between those two?
That's a good question. I think it's different for everybody. I think you have to figure out your own goals and what you want out of life. Ultimately, I think it's whatever you want. Like you have to figure out what it is you want.
Honestly,
and you have to find your why. And once you find your why, once you find your goals, set your goals, whatever they are. I think there's levels, there's steps you can get, but you can't always look at the end goal. You can't, because sometimes that can be years away. That can be a decade. That can be, it can be years away. So most people need to see like some sort of success to kind of keep them going.
Oh fuck.
And I think like that's why it's so important to like have short-term goals that build up to your long-term goals. And like, just that, and knowing your reason why, and taking short steps. Like when you have those negative intrusive thoughts like that, just kind of like take a step back and just like remember why you're doing it, and like have a reason other than like self-benefit and like I don't want to say self-pleasure, but like self-benefit, like benefiting just like you, it's just about you, because it's not about you. Like not everything's about you. Like it's.
What were some of the biggest motivators that got you through college? Like when you're going through and you're like, fuck.
Well, besides the fact, like I was like, I gotta pay off this debt. I didn't turn it back down.
That's a good one.
That's
a legit one.
Man, honestly, it was just that, like there was a couple times where I was like, man, I'm about to just like throw in the towel. But a lot of it was I just didn't want to go home and be like I failed. Like I quit, I gave up. Like that's just not in me. Like it's not like a part of who I am. Like I don't want to be known as a quitter, somebody that just gave up and quit. Like that's not what I want to be known for. It's not who I am. It's not what I want to show my kids. Like years from now, and they're like, "Oh, did you go to college?" I'm gonna be like, "Oh, I went 2 years and dropped out and quit." And that's not taking away from somebody that couldn't do it, or like whatever like with somebody else. Like I'm not judging them, but like for me personally, it was just like, nah, man, like I'm gonna get through this, and it was just like I started it, so I'm gonna finish it, and it was just. For me, it was that simple. But there were times where I did struggle, and like friends came through, friends and family like taught me through some stuff, and you have a stressful semester and you're like, oh man, this sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do this again. And
dude, there's something so beautiful about having that community you can fall back on, because personal strength only goes so far. You ever hear of Goggins?
Yeah, David Goggins. Of course.
You already fucking know, bro.
Yeah, I love Goggins, man. He's awesome.
Dude, I love having a feed on Instagram. And because sometimes I go through my feed and it's just bullshit, right? Going back to what I was talking earlier about the documentary, The Social Dilemma, that a lot of times the feed people tend to go towards if they stay on it long enough. Like if you're going through an Instagram or a YouTube long enough, it will bring you to what was described as the car crash equivalent of the internet. Because when you're going down the highway, what drags your attention? Like most, a car crash. Everyone fucking looks at the car crash, right? So when you stay on the internet long enough, it'll bring you to the wacky, like, who's the rapper that 6ix9ine who has like the fucking colored teeth?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like he's the equivalent of that. Like he's just the most ridiculous, wacky, zany, crazy town guy. But anyway, so there are times when I'm really good and disciplined and shit, where I'll filter my Instagram, and when I need that community, it's like you can turn your Instagram feed and things like that into that fuel, into that positive fuel. Where like, all right, I just see Goggins and Jocko and a bunch of other people that I fuck with, and they're like, yeah, they keep me on the path. Yeah. They bring me back to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's those guys are like super motivating, and they're the exception though. Like, not most people aren't like that. Like, they're definitely the exception, but that's not saying you can't become like that. And in a lot of ways, like mentally, like their mentality. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Goggins is like what 40 something, and he's out there running like ultras.
It's like super six.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, like I'm 23, and I'm like, God, like,
ultra.
But that's something that like I do want to strive to be like mentally, like just being able to push through something like that, and like in whatever aspect of life that is, you know, business, like whatever, like just being able to mentally push through that.
Because there's something like you're talking about the infantry, because I've had my own equivalents to like where you blood, sweat, and tears type shit, and you get through it and you're like, I feel fucking hardened. Like, oh, goddamn.
Because it like molds you. Like before I like, and I'm not sitting here like I didn't do anything special. There's a lot of people that have went before me that have done that, and a lot of people that have done things a lot greater than that. But to me, going into that, before that, I was immature. I was like, you know, immature. You know, I was, you know, did things and like said things that were immature. A lot
like, in what ways? Like, what ways do you think it matured you?
What I had to learn like to keep my mouth shut in a lot of ways. Like, because you have to. It's kind of hard to explain. Like, I was immature, and I was like, you just have that high school maturity, I guess. And I was young, I was like 19. So, going into that, like, you can't just break down and cry because you're gonna be, you're gonna get that stigma, like, you just kind of look weak, and you can't. There's a time and place for everything, and like that's just not the time and place for it. Like, you can just. Go like at night when everybody's like in their bunks and stuff. Like, you just,
curl the ball.
Yeah, go to the bathroom stall and cry. Like, whatever you gotta do. Like, but like to me, by going through those hard moments and times where I wanted to quit, and times where I was like, man, dude, this one more mile, I'm out. Like, it was just moments like that and getting through that. Like, how you have to dig deep, you have to find a way. Like, whatever it is, like however you need to figure it out. Like, whatever way you need to, whatever you need to do to figure it out. Whatever you have to do mentally to dig deep and fight through it. Like, getting through those moments, overcoming those obstacles, that gives you the mental, like, fortitude, the mental ability to, like, be like, oh, yeah. It gives you the confidence to be like, I can do anything. Like, coming out of basic, man, like, it's not the greatest achievement on the planet, but, like, mentally, but for me, I was like, dude, I could go right now and, like, I can just do anything. I can climb Mount Everest. I can literally, like, I'm a one-man army. Like, I was like, yeah. You have that mentality. And that's why I think, like, hard times create, like, hardened people. And it fortifies you. It makes you mentally tough and emotionally tough, too. Like, it toughens you up. And I think
that's... there's something, like, to be a man, like, there's a level of toughness you need to get.
It's not even just about being a man. I think, you could be a woman too, obviously, dude.
Sorry, when I said man, I mean like from boy to man, like that maturity.
Yeah. It's a maturity aspect. It's like it's you go from like, relying on your mom and dad all the time and to, okay, this is on me. Like, yeah, I've got to do this. Like, there's no crying, there's no quitting. Like, you have to find a way, like, through the blisters, through the pain, just do it. Just figure it out. Like, go to a place in your mind where you can just get through it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it made me tough, man, like, in a lot of ways. And yeah.
Dude, fuck yeah. Huh. I think about that a lot, like maturity. Because you hear of the funniest example I could give is like the oldest guy in the club. You don't want to be the oldest guy in the club. Like rotten fruit. He didn't mature properly. There was something missed there. So I wonder a lot about how to get through life without regret. Like, what is the way to become the kind of person where I don't do things I regret? And I mean that in like an honest way, where it's not I'm bullshitting myself, where I'm bullshitting myself into, what if I just make myself not feel regret? Like, there are times you should feel regret, but how to be that kind of man where I don't do anything anymore where I regret. What stages of maturity are necessary to go through? And so toughness and self-reliance. Yeah.
Honestly, though, with that, man, I would say that everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's going to have regrets in life. And I don't think anybody gets to the end of their life and they're like, oh, I've done everything perfectly. Like, I don't regret anything. I think everyone has regrets. That's part of being human. It's just part of living. It's part of life, But it's what you do in those moments where you make those mistakes. You fail. You did something you shouldn't have done, and you learn from that. You get up, pick yourself up. You get, I don't want to say get over it because that kind of takes away from.
There's like the idea of redemption really fascinates me.
Yeah.
Is there a way to genuinely move past your regret? So it's,
yeah.
I've taken all the good out of it, so it's not a regret anymore.
I don't think. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways of like redemption and like getting around things and moving past them. I don't think it. I think it matures you and it makes you not want to do those same things anymore. Like in a way,
yeah.
Like you make a mistake, then you learn from it. And I think when you do things like that, when you make mistakes, you mess up, you fail, and then you overcome that. It's important to help somebody else going through that. Like if somebody else is struggling with the same things, help them.
Yeah.
And in turn, I think that helps you. That helps you, like, because it gives you a sense of self-worth. And like, oh, hey, I just helped them. Like I overcame this. I figured out how to overcome this problem, this obstacle. This other guy, who he may not be as old as me or as mature as me or whatever, but I can help him. I can give him a little bit of advice, a little bit of wisdom to maybe he doesn't make as bad of a mistake about
yeah.
it.
There's something so rewarding about being a teacher.
Yeah.
Being like a really helpful mentor, like the elder in the tribe.
Yeah, there really is, and that's something that's really cool that you said, because like our generation, like they're stubborn, like they don't really want to listen to their elders
because I got my phone, I know everything I need to.
I'm not saying I'm innocent of that. Like I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not listening in a lot of ways, but that's they've made a lot of the same mistakes. Like our parents, like our the elderly people, they made mistakes. Like it's important to listen and learn, try to learn from them. Like, do they know everything? No. Did they screw up a lot of ways? Yeah, but like let's learn from that and let's try to like not make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
And when we do make mistakes, like it's okay. Like everybody makes mistakes. You're human. Just get up, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get back at it. Like it just. But yeah, it's hard sometimes though, because a lot of people, you get beat down in life, you fell at this, and the next thing you know, it's like a stumbling block, and you're just tumbling, and then you just can't get a leg up. You just need a break, and you just need something to go your way. You need a win, in some way, and yeah.
It's weird because as I look in my past, if I look at the worst things that have ever happened to me, like the worst things I've ever done, things along those lines, years down the road, I now look at them as some of the most useful moments of my life, like the most useful teachers, and they become incredibly worthwhile. I don't know, there's something that can be so, because sometimes you just tumble downward and then you die, and that's it. You never get out of it. Yeah, you just get into a rut and die. But so
you should definitely do stream on that one. Sometimes you just die. Well,
but I mean, like real talk, man. Sometimes you don't get out of that rut,
and that's really sobering. Like sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's out of your control. But that's where it's important that your fellow man step in. Like when somebody's really struggling and you see them like really struggling, help them out. Because if you were in their shoes, if you were like couldn't catch a break and the life was just beating the shit out of you, man, like you would want somebody to like help you, just something, a kind gesture, like, hey man, I'm here for you, like, hey, let's grab a beer, like let's go do whatever.
It's funny you say that because almost the opposite popped into my head. a similar spirit, but done in the opposite way. And by that I mean Goggins was talking about when he was like fucking up in life, he was essentially doing everything wrong in a rut. His grandpa told him, like, you're wasting your life. Yeah. Like, you're making... And it's interesting, because it's that tough love.
Yeah.
And that's something I really struggle with, because I like to be really compassionate. Like, no, I want you to feel better. Like, let me I'll give you some cushion, back rub, something equivalent to that shit. But sometimes, man...
Sometimes you need a good kick in the ass.
Like the life is kicking you in the ass and you need one more. Yeah.
Well, I think there's different ways, like... There's different ways like life can beat you down, you know, like... For instance, you're trying to get promoted at a job, and then you don't get the promotion. And then all of a sudden... This is extreme, but like your wife divorces you, your husband divorces you. Like
sometimes that shit just stacks up.
It just compounds, and then next thing you know, you're like on the street, and you're like, dude, what the hell? You know, sometimes you need a good kick in the ass, but there's other times where you need a friend. You need somebody that's like, hey man, I'm here for you. I'm just whatever you need to talk about, whatever. Like, let's just go for a hike. Let's go like just be your friend. Like, you just need somebody to like be there for you.
Oh my god, dude, there's a no, sorry.
Yeah, and it's everybody's different, and like. Yeah, there's certain points in my life I would like a good kick in the ass, but there's also the points where I'm like, nah, man, I just need a friend. Like, I see somebody just be a friend, be human with, you know.
There's this TED Talk that really hits home. Essentially, every time I watch, there was a guy who was almost a school shooter, and he was talking about when he was at his worst. Like, he bought the gun, he was about to go like do it, and a friend he thought he had fucked over so bad that like he thought he was dead to this guy, and the friend just hits him up and he's like, hey man, you want to watch a movie?
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's the simple acts of kindness, man. It's the little things, man. Like, and the older I get, the more I see that, you know, it's the little things. It's the little things in life that make such a big difference.
Yeah.
Just being kind, just saying, hey man, like, you alright? Like,
yeah.
You need a beer?
Yeah.
Beer always solves all the problems. I'm kidding, but like, yeah, it's just sometimes people just need a friend.
Yeah, and it was really simple because the way he described it, he's like, I didn't need that overbearing, like, is there anything I can do at all to help? Like, I'll always be there. Like, no, it's just that simple.
It's
exactly
genuine,
like we were saying.
Genuine.
Yeah.
Being genuine. There's so much like, so many fake people.
Fake love.
There. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so here for you, and then all of a sudden, you call them, and they're like, oh no man, I can't. I'm at this party, or I'm like, oh man, I'm doing this. Like, all right, dude. Like, okay, cool, but like. The real genuine people, that they're rare. They are rare.
Yeah.
But like, be genuine. Yeah, like be the genuine person that you would want, you know, to someone to be to you. Like,
that brings to mind a very interesting question. Do you have any idols, like people you really admire? Whether that, even if it's a guy from a movie or like a fantasy character or from a religion or in real life.
Oh man. Yeah, I would. There's a lot of people that I like. That like I'd say there's a couple that I admire. Yeah, there's really three that really comes to mind right now. The first one's actually is a pastor in my church. Always actually pastor emeritus now, but he's real old school. Like, I think he was born in like the 30s.
Cool.
So he's an old guy, but just the man, hard worker, honest. Like, he was a carpenter before he became pastor. And just lived a life that
Jesus
like
was a carpenter. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I don't think there's any correlation. Like the man he was honest. He just did what he said he was gonna do. He was an honest man, and he lived a like faithful life. Like, he just did the, you know, people call it the mundane 9 to 5, but he just took care of his family, did the right thing, and just set a good example. And he's always been kind of like never really had a temper. I've only ever seen him mad once. That was very funny.
I was about to say, that sounds like an interesting.
That was funny. That was actually my fault. I mean, just a great man, and like a great leader, someone to look up to and like, aspire to be. And he was just consistent, faithful, and like he didn't do the military thing. He wasn't a millionaire. He wasn't anything crazy or special, but like he was consistent. He was faithful, and like he was just somebody. He was a mentor, a role model, like a good role model. He took care of his family, like. He did what he's supposed to do. He didn't. He might have disagreed with people, but he didn't like yell at them or hate. Like, he wasn't hateful. Like,
dude, there's something so important in the good blue collar man, because I feel like in so many of the stories we hear that it trumps up this idea of like the only worthwhile thing to do in life is be a quote unquote great man, like be an Alexander the Great and Elon Musk. Go be like a Walt Disney, go be this wonderful, super extravagant. But nah, man, sometimes the best thing you can do with your life, like genuinely, truly, the best thing is to be that kind of guy.
Yeah. Just be consistent, be faithful and true to your beliefs and like to your family. Like, wake up, go to work, provide for your family, like, do those simple little things, man. Like, be genuine, be like consistent and faithful. Like, that's more than like you can expect from like most people. Like, and
I feel like a lot of the most powerful people could learn a lot from a guy like that.
Like, I look up more to him, and there's several people that like I know that are wealthy in a sense. They're not like billionaires or anything, but they're wealthy, and I look up to him more than I do them. Like any day, like he trumps them any day because he didn't have a great. He never went to college, never did anything crazy like that, but just consistent, hardworking, consistent, faithful, and like took care of his family.
Yeah.
Like, just did what he said he was gonna do.
Fuck yeah.
Like, it's just that simple.
Oh, and the thing, I wanted to jump on about the idea of a carpenter earlier, because speaking symbolically for a second, the idea of there's no bullshitting in carpentry, right? Like, you can't say, this house is gonna stand, and then, like, it'll fall if you don't do it right. Like, you have to say the truth. You have to be honest in your work. And there's something, like, that maybe translates to your soul, like, your very way of being by doing an activity like that. I don't know. There's something cool about that.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of that's, like, being a blue blue collar worker is, like, rewarding. Like, I used to cut grass and stuff when I was, like, in my teens and things like that. And, like, when I would, like, cut a field and stuff, like, it was very satisfying to like look and see my work, like what I had done. And you know, I was young and like didn't really know a whole lot like any better, but like it was just satisfying, you know, like I'd done honest day's work. Like I worked hard, like, and that's something that I think is missing from our generation is like they want to be lawyers and doctors, and there's nothing wrong with that. You should like I actually, you know, want to be a lawyer one day, hopefully. And there's nothing wrong with like aspiring to be like that, but I'm not any better than a plumber.
Yeah.
Or somebody cutting grass, or
like, oh, you just like, plumb, like, bro, do you know how important of a job that is? That's the backbone of fucking America.
Man.
Yeah,
like, they make bank. Like, it's just, and a lot of it goes back to just treat people like how you want to treat it. You know? And there's just, it's to me, it's crazy how like our generation's kind of like drifted away from that, like being an honest hard worker, like in this simple mundane task of making your bed in the morning to cutting your grass and mowing your lawn, like things like that. And I think it's showing nowadays. Like people, like you look anywhere you go, like people they're hiring everywhere because people don't want to stay and work.
Yeah.
And like that's a whole argument in itself of fair wages and things like that and proper benefits. But like people just don't want to work. You know, they have this fantasy. They live in they don't live in reality. Like they want to be the multi-millionaire like Dan Brazilian, like living on the yachts and the women, but like that's not reality. Like most people will never achieve that. Like,
yeah. And you know, to interrupt you for a quick second, is that Dan Bilzerian had an interview with Joe Rogan, and he said, like, dude, the happiest moments in my life have been just hanging out with friends on the beach doing mushrooms. And you don't need to be but like you don't need to be a super multi-millionaire. And he said that like that's the best moments of his life, and there's something to that, man.
Yeah,
like
there really is, man. It's the little things, it's the little moments, and like Hollywood's kind of like propped up all of this, like, you know, big living. Like I gotta have a yacht and like a Ferrari and all this stuff, man. Like
bad bitches and
I gotta have all this cool stuff, but like, dude, it's cooler to me to like marry a woman or man or whatever, like have a significant other, be faithful to them, have a family with them, and show up every single day, regardless of how tough times are. You're showing up, you're doing your thing every day, you're supporting them. Like that's, to me, that's way more impressive than like going and partying at a club and throwing 10 grand and like you're not being a good mentor, a good like somebody. You're not being a good like I don't want to say leader because that's kind of like overused, but like you're just not being someone like that you want like your kids to be like. I guess like, in a way like something like it's like that simple. It's like I don't want my kids to like go to like clubs and be a party or like all that stuff. Because you go to places like that, like I'm not saying like I have, like I haven't, but like you live that lifestyle all the time. You're into that stuff all the time. Eventually something's gonna like happen. Your body's your liver's gonna give out. You're gonna get shot. Like,
they call it being wasted for a reason.
Yeah,
People will
like,
waste you if you keep doing it.
It's everything in moderation, but you just can't.
There's something hollow in that, dude. There's something like missing in the. Yeah, when I listen to a lot of the Weeknd's songs, he sounds like he's in a lot of pain a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Like, despite all he's having sex with the most beautiful women, super rich, probably on the best drugs around, but he seems like there's something really, really deep, fundamental missing from his life. And I think that's a great, a metaphor or analogy for maybe to speak really wildly and broadly for a second, in our society as a whole. Like, there seems to be a misplaced value in what we teach, especially when we talk about Hollywood and like the music business and things like that. Like, something should be above all that.
I think a good way, like, for me to say that is like would be like we're missing our soul, like the soul, like we're missing the reason we do that. Like, why? What's the point of going and partying and doing all these things? Like, to me, there's more value in like having a family and like providing for them and making sure they're taken care of, and then contributing to my community, like in whatever way I can, and trying to benefit, trying to make life, make this country, make your city, your town better today than it was yesterday, and inspiring change in other people to do the same thing. And to me, like, we've lost a lot of that. We've lost the soul of like why we're doing things. Like,
Missing the soul.
You're just missing the soul. Like, you're missing the, like, you're doing all this stuff. You're partying. You're doing drugs. You're doing all this stuff. But like, you're missing like the connection, like the soul, the reason, And like, a lot of people try to fill that hole, that void with drugs, alcohol, women, men, whatever. Like, pleasures of the world. You want to say it like that, and it just, in the end, it temporarily fulfills you, but it doesn't sustain you long term. Like, it doesn't create real true happiness. Let's go.
Definitely, man.
It's good. I do think there's, we've been kind of talking about doom and gloom a lot, I guess, in this podcast, but there is hope, I think, for our journey. There's hope for this country, and like, a lot of people don't think that, and I disagree. I think there's hope. I think there is a lot of corruption. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of corruption everywhere in the world, in this country, but I think there's hope. I think that it starts with people. It starts at the individual level, like people making change within themselves, and then stepping up. Not shying away from their duty, from their responsibilities, as far as like running for office, voting, like going and being involved in your community and making change. Like, it starts there. It starts like, first it starts with yourself. Like, you have to figure out what you believe in, like what your beliefs are, like things like that. And then you have to be willing to fight for that stuff, man. Like, go implement change. Go be the change. And I think there is hope. I think our generation is starting to wake up the older we get, and I think there are different times coming. I think there are people are becoming leaders. They're stepping up. They're stepping into those shoes, and they've seen the corruption, and they don't want to be the corruption. They don't want to be that corrupt politician. They don't want to be the corrupt superintendent of the school or whatever. Like, they don't want to be that. They want to be change. And yeah. But I think there's hope. I do think there's hope. Like, I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm not throwing in the towel for this country, man. Like, I love this nation, and we stand for. There's a lot of things that we've done wrong as a nation, absolutely, 100%. But I also believe that, like, this nation stands for what's right and like what's just in the world, And we're not perfect, but who is, man? Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Real shit, bro. Man, honestly, to tack on top of that, there's so many ideas in like our collective unconscious about apocalypse, right? You see it in so many of the artist's portrayal of the future. When we talk about the movies, like you can see so many different representations of the future where it's apocalypse. But fuck, man, like think about the power level we're getting as humans. This ability to the internet, the ability to travel to space, to colonize different places. When you hear about things like Neuralink, the ability to communicate telepathically with people, that being an actual realistic possibility of our adulthood, that's an interesting thing when you look into it. And a million different ways in which we have the power that if you were to go many generations back, they would call us gods. Like the way they created gods in their religions, the powers that those gods have, we have those powers now in a very realistic way, and we're more likely to get those to an even higher level. And man, if we get our soul right, if we align our wisdom to that level of power, how amazing could life be? Like, it's pretty mind-blowing to imagine. To think of like the Star Trek sort of future, something to the nth degree of that being a reality.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree to an extent on that. I mean, I think we've made progress. I would not compare us to gods or God. I don't think we're nowhere near that level. I mean, if you're religious in whatever way, like, in really whatever religion, like, that's on another level. He created everything from the atom to the universe. Like, he transcends time. He's outside of time. Like, he created all of this. He created physics. Like, created all the things that we're doing. Like that we're doing. He created us. Like, if you believe that, but I wouldn't compare us to him. But I would say we've definitely made leaps and bounds. And I would say the possibilities are endless. Like, it's like we could be, like you said, like we could be living Star Trek in the next couple hundred years. Like, we could be there. Like, and I'm all for, like, pushing for science, scientific innovation, things like that, you know. But me personally, I wouldn't say we're anywhere near, like, God's level. Like,
well, when I say God, I don't mean the Christian God. I mean a lot of the older gods that you find where our ability to, let's say, soar through the sky hundreds of miles an hour, our ability to, we can clone beings now. Like, we can create that. I think they created a lamb a few years ago, an exact replica of another lamb. Like, they photocopied it. No, not photocopied.
Photocopy.
Yeah, they copy and pasted it.
They just put the lamb in the copy machine.
Our ability to harness the sun and the fact that we could destroy, like, literally kill all life on Earth. Like, we have that power, and we have that equivalent in many ways in a creative way. The fact that we're being able to manipulate people's genes and create, very realistically, being able to create superhumans in the next few decades. People that have incredible strength, that can live for incredibly long amounts of time, things along those lines. But my point for saying this is you hit something that I keep hearing and I keep feeling in so many different parts of our society, is this lack of soul, this lack of some deep fundamental truth about what it means to be really happy in life. And it's hard for me to put my finger on that.
Well, if you want my opinion, I guess.
Yeah,
for my opinion, I think the soul of our nation, and this is my opinion.
Would you say the spirit of a nation?
No. Good one there. No, I think the soul of our nation, and something that we've forgotten and gone away from, is God, is religion. And I mean, I'm Christian, so I'm going to advocate from a Christian point of view. You know, we've gotten away from God, and, you know, our school systems, like a couple decades ago, they had God involved in the school systems. However you think about that, right or wrong, you know, we didn't really see as much crime back then, like, as we do now. Like, just some of the types of crime, like school shootings, like, for instance, like in my dad's generation, like, he would carry, like, in the South, he would carry a shotgun in his truck, you know, where he'd go hunting after school and things like that. Mm-hmm. And nowadays, like, oh, you don't do that. Like, you don't do that at all. Like, yeah. It's things like that. And I think we've gotten away from our roots, you know, like, whatever, regardless of what people say. I think this country was founded on God. Our forefathers were religious, a lot of them were Christian, and there's a bunch of different sects of Christianity, of course, but like
a lot of the core of it remains.
Yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of that is because like you believe in something bigger than yourself, and it's you believe in God that you believe in God that's righteous. That's like he's good. Like everything he does is good, and it gives you a moral guideline to how to live life.
A moral guideline.
It gives you morals, because like without God, without like that ability to decide right from wrong, what are you doing? Like what is wrong? Like what? Like, and I think that's why like our soul is being eroded, because we've taken God away from everything. Like we take him out of schools, we take him out of Hollywood. I mean, we take him out of music. And I'm not sitting here saying you should be a Bible thumper all the time. I'm not advocating for that, but I'm saying there is a place for God in the United States, in our lives.
And in humanity, man. In every society ever, there's always been a religion. And religion seems to largely be, like you say, this moral guideline.
It does. It guides society into things that are right and wrong. Like, you see people that are just so empty, and they're just so... They're like, they don't know which way to turn. They don't know where to go. Like, how do I live a fulfilled life? How do I live a good life? And they don't know where to go. And it's because like they don't have God. I mean, like they don't have that sense of that connection, that relationship. And as a Christian, like, you believe like you have a relationship with God, like with him, and so you have that person that spiritual being to talk to just be there. You know what I'm saying? Like just to like be there in a sense. And I'm not saying like you hear voices in your head, like that's a little too hard. But there is a place for God, and I think especially in our society, like morally. And if you look through the past like several decades, last 50 years, last 20 years, morals in our country have slowly, like morality is shifting. Like what is moral, what is right, what is wrong? Like
there seems to be like this battle. I don't know if that's the right way to think of it, between science and religion, and it's been going on essentially ever since science has been started up. Because now you start to, if you apply this very literal interpretation of a lot of these religious texts, and you try to prove it with scientific methods, a lot of it falls short. Like for example, okay, let's say in the Bible, the world is 10,000 years old. Okay, but when we measure the age of the Earth with a lot of scientific methods, it turns out it's millions. I forget if it's millions or billions of years. Much older than that.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of many different ways in which science and religion clash. But I think there's a problem with viewing a lot of religion literally. I
think it's perspective. So like in the Bible, like, and this is even in Christianity, this is like argued, like it's a big topic. Like how long did it take God to create everything we know? And like in the Bible it says 7 days or 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. But a lot of people think like that's 7 days or 6 days his time, 7 days his time. But in like our time, because he lives outside of time. Like it is hard to understand, but like he created time. So like it could be millions of years, like in what we would consider days. Like because our days and years are we've created that construct. Like we created the definition of a day. It's 24 hours. It's like one rotation around the sun. So like one rotation, like one. The Earth, but not one rotation around the sun's a year, right? So like we've kind of like put those, like we've kind of defined things in our own way. But like that's not the way God defines things. Like that's nowhere in the Bible. Like in the Bible does it say like 1 year is one rotation around the sun. So we've kind of like defined things, and like what we think is a day may not be a day in God's time. Now I'm not saying like that is or isn't. I'm just saying like maybe like it's perspective in that sense. But going back to the soul of the nation, man, I just think that like we have over time just been degrading ourselves morally. And like if you look like 20 years ago, things like pornography was taboo, like big time taboo. Like 20, 30 years ago, super taboo, man. Like bestiality wasn't heard of. Like that stuff is like incest. Like it doesn't happen.
That's weird. Now here's a very interesting thing. I've heard it said that if you really want to understand the culture, look to the contradictions in that culture. Look to the beliefs that kind of clash with one another. And when we talk about Christianity, a lot of it is, like you say, that sexual promiscuity, this incest, bestiality, that's like, what the fuck? No, that's obviously, and outside of Christianity, a lot of people believe that shit's wrong. But my point being that way,
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that's.
When you look at the highest amounts of people who watch porn, and specifically that incest porn, which is fascinatingly the most popular form of porn nowadays. I mean, it's stepbro and stepmom, but I watched an interview with a porn star who says the only reason they call it step is because if they said literal mom or brother, banks wouldn't allow them to, file their money in that bank. Like, they're like, no, we don't want any part of that. So it's more of like a loophole. And the majority of people who watch that are in states that have the highest amount of people who believe very deeply in Christianity. And it's a very strange, like, clash of these two beliefs.
It is a problem. It is another pandemic. You know, I would say it's like the silent pandemic of our generation is pornography. Like, and it's men and women. It's not just men anymore. Like, it used to kind of just be men, but it's women too. Like, and it affects, like, you can do a lot of research on it, man, but it affects your brain chemistry, like, down to the core, like 100%. And like, it's just things like that. It's like slowly over time becoming more and more accepted by society. And like that, and like bestiality, like what's the pedophilia? Yeah, pedophilia. Like, all those things are becoming more and more like accepted. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's not as wrong as we thought. Like, and it's like, and like in California, like, it's kind of like, hey, you kind of do what you want kind of deal. Like, they're trying to like define pedophilia as like a mental ailment and not like a legitimate sexual crime. Like, it's things like that are just slowly, like, we're as a society, like, we're morally degrading. Like,
that is an interesting one, because I think there's a strong case to be made that it is a mental illness largely. Like,
I'm gonna be honest with you on that one. Nah, I don't think so at all. I think if you make everybody can have intrusive thoughts, okay, but when you act on those thoughts and you do something that sinister to someone, I don't think you can argue that, hey, I may not be all the way like right in the head, but like, man, that's like, come on, like.
I think, well, okay, I don't want to put a blanket statement over this, because I'm sure there are a lot of people in the category of pedophile, but I think at least in some cases there is in your brain the wiring got fucked up. You're only attracted to children and young people. Like, there's a comedian who makes a great joke about it, which is fucked up, but it's funny. It's like, I lucked out. Everyone, like, when I used to be attracted to 12-year-old girls, but I was 12 at the time. And now I'm attracted to 20-year-old girls, and I'm 20. But I could have just as easily be 20, and if my brain was a little different, I never stopped being attracted to kids. Like, and that's in some cases.
But those are dangerous waters. Those are dangerous. Like, I'm like, man, like, that's just so dangerous. Because, like, what's next? Like,
I'm not saying, like, if that person acts on, like, if you're schizophrenic and you think, like, voices in your head are telling you, like, I must kill the president, which I think happened with the assassination attempt of Reagan or Truman, I forget exactly which one, but the person who did it, he was schizophrenic, and like, he has these hallucinations and he's losing touch with reality. And I don't think you should treat that person as just your stereotypical murderer. You should treat them as someone their brain is fucked up. And I'm not saying you make murder okay, but you're now trying to treat them for mental health reasons. Like, there's an example of a man who was a mass shooter several decades ago, and he kept a journal. And in this journal, he says at the end, like, once I'm dead, because I'm going to go do all these crazy things, I end up getting killed by police, I want to do an autopsy on my brain. Because for his whole life, very normal man, nothing really wrong going on. But in the course of either several months or several years, he started to have these incredibly strong, like, aggressive fantasies and impulses, and he started to lose control of them. And at a certain point, they just kind of overtook him, and he went on a shooting spree, killed his wife and his mom, and started shooting at police, and he ended up getting killed. And they did an autopsy, and they found he had a tumor in his brain that was pressing on the part that started only growing recently. It was pressing on the part of your brain that increases aggression, and the part of your brain that allows you to inhibit yourself. So when you have a thought, like you said earlier, like we all have our fucked up thoughts from time to time, but we don't do them, and that's like the difference.
Yeah.
But that part of the brain that stops you, in him it was fucked up. So it's like I don't stop myself anymore. Every fucked up thought.
And see, and that goes into there's so many things that like are questionable. Is like, what do you do in this situation? And like that's a situation where would he have done that if he didn't have the tumor? Like, and that's something.
Almost certainly not. No, that was...
Why? But how can we know? But see, and that's a legal thing. That's like that's your attorney's got to argue that. You know, like, but the majority of times, like I think like you see these cases. Like there was a lieutenant colonel like a couple years back in Florida. I think he was a retired Marine, lieutenant colonel, something like that. That was like busted on child porn cases, and I'm like, dude. Like, and there's been so many prominent people like Jeffrey Epstein, like Epstein Island, like prominent people who are like accepted by society generally, and are like leaders in society that like do those things. And to me, that is like, okay, he's not mentally ill. He's clearly capable of surviving in society, fitting into society, even being a leader in society. And then all of a sudden, this comes out and like this like. He's doing child porn and like, or he's like filming child porn and things like that. I'm like, well, he's clearly, in my opinion, like he's clearly not like mentally disabled. Like, you might have like things going on, issues going on, but you had the ability to decide right from wrong, and you decided to do the wrong thing.
I think there are definitely cases where that is true. Where
I agree with you though, there are cases like with a tumor and like people are definitely like have mental issues that are doing those things. Like, I agree with that. But I would say the majority of time, that's not the case. I think the majority of time, people, over time, their morals get degraded and they give into their fantasies and they do these crazy things. I think porn has contributed a lot to that.
Yeah.
And over time, they give into their dark desires and whatever, and that kind of crap happens, man. And
if that's the case, then I definitely think it should be punished more along the lines of your standard criminal who's making a morally poor choice, as opposed to someone who has lost control of their functions and they're essentially becoming possessed by this illness. But yeah, I think that definitely has to be taken as a case by case.
It's definitely case by case. I agree with that. But I think ultimately people have to be held accountable for their actions.
But that's weird. Okay, let me put it to you like this: the man. Let's say, for the sake of argument, the man with the tumor. If he didn't have the tumor, he never would have done those things. Okay, so let's say the cops didn't kill him. And they find out he has this tumor in his head. They remove the tumor. He no longer has those fantasies, those impulsive aggression. Do you think he should still be tried for those crimes? Or do you think it should be seen like, okay, this wasn't you, this was the illness?
So he committed the crime.
Yes.
And but they removed the tumor.
It's strange because when you say he committed, it's almost like he didn't. It's like the illness committed the crime. The illness took him over. He lost the ability to stop himself.
So two things there. I think one, there's no way to really know for a fact. Like the tumor 100% caused him to do that. There's no way to like actually know that.
Well, I would disagree because there are a lot of studies that show when you have those areas of your brain fucked up, you will start to act on these very aggressive impulses. It won't be a matter of, you won't be able to stop yourself. And I think that's where a lot of people find issue with letting a guy like that off without punishment. Because, like, to really think you not being able to stop yourself, removing choice from the equation.
But how can we definitively know that? Like, know that, hey, had this tumor not been in his head, he wouldn't have killed his wife and kids. Like, there's no way for us to know that. So
I would disagree. I think if you study people who have similar illnesses and then have those illnesses healed or tumors removed and they no longer exhibit those same behaviors, that's a pretty good way of knowing, like, okay, this was the cause.
Yeah, see, I disagree with that. And because there has to be accountability. Like, this guy murdered his wife and kids, okay? And then a year later they removed the tumor and they're like, okay, the tumor caused that, but it's still him. He still committed the crime, and he still ultimately decided to do that. Was he influenced? Yes. Should that maybe factor into his punishment? yes, maybe he shouldn't get the death penalty or whatever. Maybe his punishment shouldn't be as severe. However, he still committed the crime. He still committed the act. Therefore, he must be held accountable.
But when you say held accountable, you're holding the person accountable. But okay, let me put it to you like this. Let's see if this works. There's a drug in South America that essentially people can turn into a powder, and it's infamous. It's one of like the worst drugs in the world. They'll just walk up to you on the street and blow it in your face. And when it's blowing in your face, you will do whatever they tell you to do, and you will have no memory of doing it. So people will like rob stores, and they'll just wake up in their house naked, everything's gone. They're like, what the fuck happened? And okay, so, and let's say in that process, that person killed multiple people. The person who blew it in their face told them to. Should that person be held accountable because they were not in control of their faculties?
That's a good argument. I mean, that is definitely a good argument. See, in that case, you would have to prove that the powder actually, like, made the guy do it. Like, the powder, made this guy to where he could be controlled. And you have to prove that.
So for you, it's a matter of being able to prove legitimately that they didn't have control.
Exactly.
And like, okay.
Yeah. That to me, it's like, we can't be sure that yes, you're saying that the tumor made him do it, but there's no way for us to be sure that the tumor made him 100%. It was the tumor made him do it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it's like, did the tumor affect him? Yes, but how much did it affect him? Did it take away 100% take away his ability to make decisions like that, or did it influence him? Or no doubt, it influenced him, but to what level? Like,
that's gotta be a pretty high. If you're killing your wife and your mom, but beforehand you were never violent, like, okay, you can get mad at your wife and you're like, all right, I want to tell you shut the fuck up, but I'm not going to because there is.
I don't think we have the means to decide like what was in his head. Like, for like, I mean, there could have been times where he was like getting pissed off at his wife and then going out there and like, I don't know, like killing her dog or something, like something crazy like that, leading up to this, like to this.
I think what makes this case so interesting is that there were no examples of it, and maybe it happened to no one knew, but recorded he was just a normal guy for entirety of his life, and then over the course of a few months, it's like, and then he just created.
I mean, it's a good argument, man, but I think ultimately, like, man, that's a good one. But I think that's ultimately has to be held accountable.
I think it's a very interesting point to bring up. Where like you need to make sure how much control did he actually have.
And there's no way to.
That part I'm not so sure about, but then we would have to get into the field of like neurology.
Well, because like there's no way for you to know that because like you're not him. You're not in his head. Like there's no way for you to know like how much the tumor controlled, like how much the tumor made him lose control. Like if you know what I'm saying. Like
I would say if you do, you could study people that have that degree of pressure on certain parts of the brain, and the pressure probably reduces blood flow or increases it in certain ways. So you could say, okay, when blood flow is increased or reduced to these areas of the brain that control that can inhibit behavior, and then you can look at what happens in people where the blood flow is cut off or increased, and you can kind of study consistently they do these things, right? Like where the human brain is like this, they will consistently do these things, and you can go to psych wards and you can study that on mice and rats and other animals that are very close to us and when it comes to our neurology. And so I think there are some solid ways to study it, but I get where I definitely get what you're saying, where it's like if you can't measure it.
Yeah, it's like you can't, like, yes, you might be able to know, like, okay, this tumor definitely influenced him, but how much did it influence him? Like, that, and that's why I'm like, okay, there's got to be some type of, like, accountability. There's got to be some type of line, because, like, if you're just like, oh, there was a tumor there, but it only influenced him, like, 30% of the time, well, then...
Well, yeah, you can prove that it was only, like...
It's hard, that's what I'm saying, like, it's hard to measure that. Like, it's almost, that I know of it. I'm not an expert.
Yeah, me neither.
But like, there's no way like that I know of to measure that. Like, measure what's in a guy's head leading up to the act. So like, based on that information, like, I would have to say like he has to be held accountable. Now, would I take into consideration the fact that like there was a tumor influencing his decision? Yes, in the punishment. Like, probably wouldn't put him to death, but he would, in my opinion, like probably go to prison for a while and get treatment, and then I don't know, like, but I think you have to have accountability in that sense, and that's an unfortunate circumstance. Like, but that's like an extreme 0.001%. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like 0.0001%. Like, that's not the majority. So,
Very true.
majority of the time, like people just make bad decisions. You messed up.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be held accountable, and that starts at our level. It goes all the way up to the top, man. Like to government.
Oh yeah.
That's something that is definitely not done in government.
So yeah, man, I swear to God, when we talk about like all these issues that are going on right now, I feel like a core of a lot of them, if not all of them, goes back to that religious
soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is too, because like when you're fulfilled, man, when you're fulfilled, like you care about your fellow man, like you want them to be fulfilled, you want them to be like, you're gonna exhibit kindness because you want kindness to be shown to you, and like that's just what we're missing in America. And I think we've took social media and like entertainment has kind of tried to take the place of that, and has warped our narrative, warped our like a way of thinking about things. And
it's funny you say that. I was listening to a psychologist who studies a lot of religions and tries to interpret them psychologically. That he says we're kind of returning to pantheism, where essentially sorts of religions where they have multiple gods, right?
Polytheism?
Polytheism,
Yeah,
exactly.
polytheism, yeah.
And like when you look, and that we are representing that through our art, through our movies. Like you look at the Avengers, one of them is literally a god, Thor.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's extremes, like I just think that truly though, like a lot of our problems can be solved with just turning back to, and this is, I'm Christian, so my Christian point of view is just turning back to God. And like,
well, I think if you translate that to other religions as well, right? For people who are coming to the country or in it, who believe in different sorts of religions, I think in a lot of religions there is a core. There's a core of people trying to figure out, how do we live? How exactly do I go about living in a way that's good, that's worth it, that I don't regret, that is fulfilling?
Even in most religions, man, like, even Islam, like they're considered like a violent religion, but like that's like they're extreme, obviously, but like there's a core family. There's a mother, father. Sometimes different sects, like multiple wives, whatever. But there's a core family. They take care of each other. They take care of like the kids. They're all about taking care of the family, like the core family. And like it's the same thing in Judaism and Christianity. Like is a core family, and like that's something we've gotten away from. Like here, like in our like society is like the core family. Like whatever that means, like to you, it could be like mother, father, kids. It could be like extended family, cousins, like whatever it is. But like we've gotten away from that. It's like we don't want anything to do with our family. Like we get older, like we go to college, and then like that's it. Like, just see them once a year. Like
I heard one of the biggest issues right now is that we live in a hypo-natural environment, meaning that a lot of the things we live in, and environments we live in, and things we do right now are not aligned with what we're designed to live in, right? Like, for example, all the times people spend sitting, all the shit food we eat, the lack of movement or the lack of interaction with people you're really close with.
I think that shows too, in the type of like issues that we're presented with now in society, like the your health issues, like diabetes.
Oh
like,
my god, yeah.
That's
heart disease is the number one killer.
Yeah, heart disease, cancers, like things like that are all because I think a lot of the reasons is because like the things that we're doing nowadays, like we're not exercising like we should, we're not eating like we should, like there's just things like that, man. Like it has a cost. Everything has a cost.
Yeah, so. It's weird, dude, when you look at these big problems, how much of them. Because I don't want to necessarily put it all on the soul, because it could possibly be like it's a combination of the lack of natural environment combined with the lack of a soul, combined with overvaluing money and a million things that ended up
there's like a bunch of different issues I think going on, but I think the core of those, like the heart of the issue, the soul of the issue is the fact that like we've gotten away from God and gotten away from our morals as a country.
I suspect it's largely true
too.
All right, something to close up with. What do you think? Damn, I want it to be something about morals, something about like what should be placed above something else. Okay, so what do you think is a false? We'll call it a false idol right now. A value we have that's like really high up but it's not worth it. Like, we really care about this thing. We think if we try to achieve what this thing wants, it'll be worth it, but it's not. And what do you think would be something good to replace that? I said that really vaguely, but I hope it makes sense.
That's a good question. Well, I think our society is like obsessed with two things. I think success and popularity.
When you say success, in what way?
Like people, every time I'm on Instagram or something, or I'm talking to somebody, it's always like, I've got to be a millionaire. I've got to drive the Ferraris. Like, I've got to be cool. I've got to be popular.
So like materials.
Like material possessions. And I'm not like against like that those kind of things.
But that's going to be tilting too much.
Yeah, you shouldn't be. That shouldn't be the priority in your life. Like, relationships should be the priority in my opinion. Like building relationships with people, making friendships. Nurturing your relationships with your family and your friends. Like, that should be the priority. And like, I'm not saying you should be ambitious and successful. Like, you should strive for that. But that shouldn't be the number one thing. Like, you just forget everything else. And, like, you're just grinding. Because like, what happens when you get that? Like, you're Warren Buffett. You're a billionaire.
And then you just feel
but you're like
inside.
90 years old, you're on your deathbed, and you look back and you're like, your whole life, you just strove to get money. You got money. You got success. You're one of the richest men in the world. But what now? Like, what then? Like, all the people, like, you could have influenced all the people that, like, you could have relationships with. You didn't do that because you were too busy chasing money.
Having better relationships with other people.
And I'm not, like I said, like, I'm not against, like, making money and, like, trying to make a better life for yourself, but that's not the end-all, be-all. Like, that's not it shouldn't be the end goal, like, for everything. Like, that's number one for me. I think, I actually forgot the second part. Crap.
Oh, wait, no, you said when you're talking about the thing that should replace it, is that what you mean?
No, you said the two reasons, right?
Oh, no, I said one value that's it's not worth it, but we have it way too high on a pedestal. And then the other thing, what do you think should replace it? But I think you've answered a few things.
Yeah.
Relationships with...
I think relationships with people, and, like, we should be caring about other people. Like, we shouldn't be assholes.
What do you think it takes to make a good relationship with someone? And even with yourself?
I think effort. Like, showing up for somebody, like, you care about somebody, like, showing up for them through the good times and the bad, and, like, showing up, genuinely caring about them, like, caring about their well-being, and, like, wanting what's best for them. Like, you may not know what's best for them, but, like, just telling them, like, hey, man, like, I'll support you, like, I want what's best for you, like, I may not know what's best for you, but, like, I want what's best for you. Like, I'm here to support you in what ways I can. Like, I'm here for you. Like, just being a good friend, like, and not being judgmental. I think that's a big one for me. Like not judging people. Like,
that's a weird one, right? Because let's say your best friend is, I don't know, stealing, or they're doing something fucked up,
Yeah,
like,
I don't think that. No, when I say judging someone, I don't mean like you shouldn't call them out on their bullshit. Like, call them out by all means. Like, if it's wrong and you think it's wrong, like yeah, like, hey man, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you obviously shouldn't mug somebody. Hey man, you shouldn't shoot somebody. Like, you should get to a level where you can be like, hey dude, like, chill. Like, don't do that. Like, that's not right.
So when you say don't judge,
I think don't judge, but like, if somebody made a mistake, if you came in and like, yeah man, like, I got in a fight, like, I messed this guy up real bad, like, I feel really bad about it. Well, at that point, it's not my place to judge you. Like, you do what you've done. Like,
and you regret it.
Like, yeah, and you realize, like, hey man, like, all right, let me help you move forward from this. Like, let's go apologize to the guy. Like, let's go see if we can make up for it. Like, I'm not judging. I'm not sitting there like, man, you're a real piece of crap. Like, I'm not sitting there continuing judging you. Like, I'm like, all right, you messed up. You acknowledged it. Like, let's.
The fact that you acknowledge it, yeah, and giving them a chance for redemption, like, not just throwing them in the trash.
It's like, all right, man, like, you fell down. Like, all right, time to get up. Like, pick them up. Like, let's go. Let's go make amends for this. Like, I think it's not judging your fellow man and, like, doing what you can to help. Like, because everybody messes up. Everybody makes mistakes. Now, that being said, like, there's levels. Because, like, you like, freaking, like, shoot 50 people.
Yeah.
You're going to get judged.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's...
But there's something to that saying, like, don't judge people. I get what you...
It's just the mundane, everyday thing, because people make mistakes, and, like, yeah. And don't be afraid to stand up for, like, what you believe in. Like, regardless of what it costs you. Now, I'm not saying go start a revolution. That's not what I'm saying. But, like,
hey, sometimes the revolutions need to be started. I'm not saying we're at that point.
I'm not advocating for that.
No.
For legal reasons.
Yeah.
I'm not. Nah, I think you should fight for what you believe in and stand up. Even if people are like ridiculing you and like making fun of you, like who cares, man?
Yeah.
Like,
If you know it's right, fuck it.
do it. Like, do what you believe in. Do what you think's right. But yeah, that's it, man.
Brandon.
Hell yeah, brother. What's up,
Fuck yeah. All right. 2 hours, 40 minutes.
dude? That was I could keep going, but I gotta get back to change for class.
Oh fuck. Oh shit. It's 6:15. Yeah.
Like, balance, man.